I'll call this meeting to order, the July 17th Monroe City Council. I appreciate Kip's being here. The roll will reflect all members of council are present, save Ms. Crawford. She said she'd be here in the next couple of minutes, so you'll see her coming in on two wheels. I need a motion for the approval of the agenda, please.
Mr. Mayor, before we approve the agenda, can I make a suggestion on that?
Yes, sir.
We have a full agenda tonight, and there's a lot of things to discuss. I would like to propose that to replace under new business 2J, instead of the first reading for the alcohol beverage ordinance amendment, I'd like to have a explanation and discussion of the ordinance, with first reading being next month, after we have a discussion on it and explanation on it this evening, because it is pretty comprehensive. Staff's done a
It is
great
comprehensive.
job there.
It is comprehensive, and we will have a discussion, but I still have first reading on here. We've kicked that around a lot.
We have, well, I'm going to tell you, we've got, something was presented to us on Thursday. First time I've seen the new ordinance was Thursday.
Right?
First time anybody in here, I think, seen it is Thursday. I'm not sure when business owners got a chance to see it, because it greatly affects our business owners
Right.
with change of license fees, et cetera, and change the way of doing things. And yet, we're going to approve doing a first reading tonight when it's only been presented to us for 3 days over the weekend.
If you're not comfortable with the discussion tonight, you can again either vote against it, or we can, as a group, decide we don't want to do it.
I'd like to make a formal motion at this point that we amend the agenda, that under new business, 2J be replaced with, instead of a first reading, to be a discussion and explanation of the ordinance.
I second that motion.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor with passing that off another month? Say aye.
Aye.
I have how many? 1? 5 opposed? Tyler, were you for or against?
I'm against.
Okay, so I have 5-2 opposed, 5-2 in favor of moving that to next month. Mr. Bradley?
Thank you.
Let me mark that one sec.
And with that, I would also propose then that the public hearing on that also go along with the first reading, being the next month.
There's no required public hearing on that particular ordinance change. Of course, the council is more than welcome to receive public comment as needed or necessary, but there's no required public hearing for changes to your alcohol ordinance.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, so we've changed that to J to next month. Now I need a motion of the approval of the agenda, please.
Move to approve.
We have a motion by Ms. Malcolm. Is there a second?
Second.
And give that one to Tyler. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries, that passes. Moving to the approval of the consent agenda, that's council minutes from June, executive session minutes, the May Planning Commission, Historic Preservation Commission, Downtown Development Authority minutes, June 8th, Downtown Development Authority minutes, May 11th, CVB, and June 8th, Convention and Visitors Bureau. I need a motion for the approval of the consent agenda, please.
So moved.
A motion by Mr. Little, is there a second?
Second.
A second by Mr. Boyce. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries, that passes. Moving to the public forum, I have Chuck Ross. Mr. Ross? I believe we're going to be talking to you in just a minute, right?
Okay.
Did you have something else you wanted to discuss?
No, sir.
Okay. Ms. Ellis from North Street.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. Thank you for coming.
I was here last month. Many of you might remember me. Many of you don't. Seems like Georgia stays in the news a lot. This time, as we know, homelessness and not having anywhere to stay affordable housing, they kind of run together. Little action was taken to address affordable housing at the General Assembly. Georgia has a no rent stabilization or rent control laws. This enables landlords to set rent and increase it across the state, given that they provide proper notice, which some don't. They can increase the rent with certain discretions as much as they wish and whenever they want. This article contradicts itself. I read less than a minute ago, it says, given proper notice, but the last sentence in this article says whenever they want. But you all know this. Not having affordable housing increases homelessness for whole families. Having nowhere to go affects the mind of people, increasing violence. Have many of you thought about that? Are we more concerned about money, the beauty of our city, rather than people itself? What is going to happen when our streets are flooded with homelessness? Are they going to be locked up and charged with disorderly conduct? In Georgia, the maximum of 12 months in jail and a $1,000 fine. Well, jail to some of them might be fine because they'll give them somewhere to go. They give them a meal to eat. Therefore, the crowding of our jails, wasting taxpayers' money with paperwork, court dates, increasing police arrests. In closing, this comes from my favorite book, the Bible. In Proverbs 14:31, he who presses the poor shows contempt for their maker, but whoever is kind to the needy honors God. Another scripture in the Bible, Proverbs 22:16, whoever oppresses the poor to increase his own wealth or give to the rich will only come to poverty. Now, I came here last month again to address homelessness, and like I said, having evictions the way they is, people, furniture and stuff being set on the side of the road with nowhere to go, people living in their cars or whatever, family being destroyed by this. But yet, this city of Monroe, I'm just talking about Monroe, this city of Monroe can't even, you can build big fine buildings or store homes or whatever like that, but you can't even, afford to have people somewhere to stay. Now I wonder, have any general contractor ever thought about, if it's money, what it means for them? If they go and pass, get whatever in writing so they can build some public housing, they become rich, a millionaire, because there's so many people don't have nowhere to go. So again, I'm gonna keep coming again and again and again to advocate for the homeless. I walk among them. I walk among them in Monroe. I walk among them in Athens. I walk among them in Atlanta. I'm not sitting behind nothing. I literally go and talk to these people. And some of them are so messed up in their mind, they don't care if they go to jail, because at least they will have somewhere to go. So I'm asking y'all, somewhere down the line, please have it in your heart for something to take place in Monroe. Okay? That's all I ask. Something to take place. And like I said, you're going to keep seeing me again and again and again.
Thank you, Ms. Ellis.
Thank you.
Andy Sims?
So I'm speaking on the curfew change for the ordinance from 2 a.m. to 12. Is that being pushed to next month?
Is that part of that?
Yeah, so actually that was part of the alcohol ordinance.
As part of the J?
It was, yeah, we put it to 12:30.
Okay, so do you want me to just come back next month?
Actually, if you'd like to speak now, that gives us plenty of time, so we won't have to push it back again.
Okay. Mr. Mayor and esteemed members of the City Council, good evening. My name is Andy Sims. As a concerned citizen of the Marketing Director of Tacos and Beer, I'm here to express an unwavering support for the current city ordinance that permits restaurants to remain open until 2 a.m. Monroe is known as the greatest small town in America. It has been attracting individuals from near and far due to its remarkable qualities. A thriving community, diverse culinary scene, charming boutiques, and engaging events, and even our nightlife has been a major factor in people choosing to call Monroe their home. I, too, made the decision to relocate here, having witnessed the city's remarkable growth and vibrancy. Initially, when I moved to the outskirts of Monroe, I rarely ventured into town during the evenings due to the limited options for the nighttime activities. However, I've been delighted to witness positive change unfold in recent years. With the establishment of the Southern Brew, Tacos and Beer, Broad Street Tavern, the Row, and the Brown Fig, our city has experienced a renaissance in its nightlife. These venues have breathed new life into Monroe, creating a sense of excitement and fostering a unique atmosphere that distinguishes our town. While it is true that most of these establishments currently close around 10 or 11, there is a growing demand for extending operating hours. Our city's reputation for vibrant nightlife has not gone unnoticed, as neighboring towns like Loganville and Lawrenceville, also observing our progress, have emulated our example. In fact, former Mayor and current State Representative Ray Martinez of Loganville, who is a frequent visitor to Monroe, has expressed his desire for a dynamic nightlife in his own town. He has requested that Tacos and Beer become the cornerstone of their future nightlife by opening a location in their upcoming town green. We've already signed contracts and are grateful to Monroe for helping us showcase how a responsible and thriving nightlife can benefit a community. Furthermore, we are currently in negotiations for a location in Lawrenceville, another city eager to embrace the nightlife their citizens have yearned for. You may have heard rumors that we are under contract to purchase the Silver Queen building. However, I will tell you we have in our contract that if this ordinance changes, we can back out of that deal. We also have plans on a possible Italian and/or steak and seafood restaurant that we will partner with to replace our current location, as well as another building we're currently looking at in the city to house the other restaurant. I understand that there may be concerns related to alcohol-related incidences and noise associated with our nighttime hours. However, I'd like to present some data obtained from Walton County's website, which indicates a nearly 50% reduction in DUI incidences from 2017 to present. This suggests that responsible practices are being embraced by our community and that the positive aspects of our nightlife outweigh the negatives. Allow me to share an excerpt from an article published in the Monroe Local this past April. Although this article primarily discussed our recent To-Go Cup discussions, I believe it carries relevance to our present deliberations. I'm not opposed to a discussion, but I am opposed to making any changes to anything we have in place, expressed City Councilman Dickinson. Our mayor, Mr. Howard, also voiced his perspective on the matter, stating that there have been minimal alcohol-related issues. He firmly believes that our role as a council is to protect the rights and freedoms of the people of Monroe rather than restrict them. Mayor Howard trusts the individuals in our community to make responsible decisions and behave in a manner that respects the neighbors and friends. He rightly emphasizes that repealing the entertainment district, removing alcohol from city-sponsored events, and suppressing the unique brand that has made Monroe the best small town in America would be a significant step backwards. It is important to recognize that the success of our entertainment district ordinance has inspired other cities, such as Forsyth, Lawrenceville, Suwanee, and Duluth, to adopt similar districts. Success begets success. In regards to noise concerns, I've been utilizing a mobile app to monitor the decibel level throughout this chamber during my presentation. The maximum reading currently stands at 90.5 decibels, with a regular conversation between two individuals typically registers around 70 decibels. Our First Friday concerts have been recorded reaching levels as high as 127. Moreover, outside Tacos and Beer from 12 to 2 on busy nights, we average around 84. If noise reduction is a priority, I would suggest addressing the issues of loud trucks that disrupt the conversations with our peak decibel levels of 112. To conclude, I would like to emphasize that imposing excessive regulations is not the solution. Stricter regulations often lead people to try to fit everything into a compressed time frame, particularly if they know they have limited time before the 12 a.m. deadline. Reducing our nightlife by 2 hours not only has a detrimental impact on revenue, but also diminishes the vitality and character of our city. Choosing to reside in Monroe means embracing a lifestyle where everything is within reach: shopping, dining, entertainment, employment opportunities, amazing tacos and beer, cocktails, great music, and so much more. A thriving nightlife is an essential component of any city as it adds depth to intrigue to the community. A city without an engaging and diverse nightlife is not so different from the places we left behind.
That is the 5-minute limit, Mayor.
Yes, sir. I got it. I had my eye on it. I waited till he introduced himself. Give me 30 more seconds.
All right, in light of the aforementioned factors of the positive outcomes we have witnessed, I implore you to maintain the current ordinance allowing restaurants to operate until 2 a.m. By doing so, we can continue to foster a vibrant and responsible nightlife that contributes not only to the economic growth of our city, but also to the overall satisfaction and enjoyment of our residents and visitors. Thank you for your time and consideration. I trust that you will make the decisions that best serves the interests of Monroe and its citizens.
Thank you, Mr. Sims. I appreciate you coming in. Kia Samuel. Kia. Kia Samuel. Apparently they're clapping for you.
Good evening, council.
Thank you for coming.
I am speaking on behalf of the affordable housing in Monroe.
And I'm sorry, Ms. Samuel, you did not give me your address, and you didn't need to say it out loud, but if you would share that with me, you can come up and write it afterward, okay?
Okay, I can do that. I'm a single mother of 3. When I moved here in Monroe back in 2020, my rent was $925 for what was supposed to be a 4-bedroom, 3-bath house, townhouse. Definitely wasn't a 4-bedroom, but whatever. When it was time for my lease to be renewed in September of 2021, it went from $925 to $1,250. Then September of 2022, my rent jumped from $1,250 to $2,000. That left me and my 3 kids homeless, sleeping in the car, all the way up until I got scammed out of $2,000 due to trying to find some place for myself and my kids to go. We have no place. There's no place. Even the cheapest apartment is in a most crime-ridden area. I have 3 kids. I'm not doing that. There's no way. It just so happened I have a friend. I practically was on bended knees. Her house is completely full, but she opened her door to myself and my daughter. I have 2 grown boys. They're not with me. I'm not used to not having my kids not being with me and not having a place for us to stay. I'm pretty sure you guys hear all kinds of sob stories about stuff like this, but this is my reality. This is what I'm dealing with on a daily basis. A daily basis. And to hear, alcohol licenses and stuff like that, like, is that really a priority compared to having somebody have a place to stay? I can't afford $2,000. And even if I did, I wouldn't pay $2,000 for some of these houses. Some of them aren't even livable, but they want $2,000. I have no place to go. No place for my kids to go. We're homeless. That's my reality. That could be somebody in your family's reality. I don't know if y'all have kids or what, but just imagine your child calling you and telling you that they went up on my rent practically double, and I have no place to go. How would you feel? Would you be heartbroken? Would you open your door to your children? What if you don't even have a door to open for your children? All of y'all are homeless. What do you do? What do you do? Like I said, this is my reality. This is what I have to deal with. I feel like I have failed my children. I feel like I'm a horrible parent because I can't provide my kids a place to stay. someplace for them to just lay their head at night and feel safe. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming in. Ms. Garrett? Lydia? Thank you for coming in.
Mayor Howard and to the council, my name is Lydia Garrett. I live at 1244 South Madison Avenue. My public comment is, I didn't come prepared to speak tonight, but I just was sitting and thinking about an event that I attended on July 1st at Matthews Park. Now, this was, I believe, put on by Chef Jacoby Ponder and a couple other people, and what they were doing was getting and just having an opportunity to give back to the community. Now, as far as I could see, it was a peaceful gathering. People were just sitting around talking, laughing. Nobody was loud and rowdy. People were enjoying the food. Some people were dancing. It was just a peaceful gathering. But it wasn't long that I looked up and I saw two police cars. Then shortly after, there were two more. And I wondered, what were they doing? What's going on? And it seemed that the problem was people were parked on the grass. And it just made me, in my mind, think, okay, we're here gathering. There's a group of people here who are gathered, having a good time, enjoying free food, a free meal. Nobody was loud, nobody rowdy. I said, okay, ain't nobody fussing or fighting. Why is the police here? The problem is we're parked on the grass. And, I just thought that was a bit much. And I believe there is a sign posted somewhere, but it's small. But there is only a handful of parking places at Matthews Park. And the other question that I have is, when is the parking going to be completed on the other side where the other pavilion is? If I'm not mistaken, I don't even know if it's finished on the other side of the park. But since this was something that was community-wide, that was the issue that I have. And if I'm not mistaken, there was another group of people this past Saturday who was at the park. There were several places to park there, but people were parked on the grass. Now, when I say parked on the grass, I'm talking about there are a couple of big oak trees as you enter the park and as you get ready to exit. So they were parked under the trees up there, just trying to get a little shade. But if that's going to be a problem, I don't want to say cut the trees down, but to do something about the parking.
Right.
That's all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Garrett.
But,
Appreciate you coming in.
and then too, I don't think the police were called or the police patrolled the area with it being parking spaces, but people were still parked on the grass. It just made me feel like one group, you got to find something,
Right.
but the other group is okay.
Thank you,
Thank
Ms.
y'all.
Garrett. I'm not going to say this quite right, but I'm going to try. Narati Paul? How are you, Mr. Paul? Are you here for public comment, or did you have something later on the agenda? Okay, we'll come back to you. And that is it for public comment. Thank you, everybody. Moving to the city administrator report.
I'm going to dispense with my report since we have a long agenda tonight.
Thank you. Mr. Bailey, Assistant City Administrator?
Ooh, I'll go super quick then. I did want to notate at the airport in October of this year, we will have our first fall festival. The ESP organization's putting it on. They've moved it from Jackson County to Monroe, which shows the improvements that we've made at the airport are paying off. So we've got our events lady helping, and they'll have all that planned. Should be a fun event. Town Green, we do have a final walk scheduled for August 1st right now. So that'll get us kind of on the path to completion there. And then my last quick thing, Danny Smith, raise your hand. I know he's not going to stand up for me. June 13th was last month's meeting, and he did not tell me, and I didn't catch, that that was his 40th year of employment that night, or that day. So, I told him he got away with it that night, but it wasn't going to slip by me tonight. So, congratulations and thanks for all you do. And that's it.
Thank you, Danny. Did you want to stand up and say something? But anyway, thank you. 40 years, you've seen a lot of changes around here. Moving to the department request for the airport. We'll come back to you, Chris.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. This is not for an expense request tonight. This is a request for the approval of our tentative allocation at the airport for our 2024 CIP. We were awarded an amount of $372,000 for the rehabilitation of our taxiway, and that comes with a 5% local match. So it's requesting the approval of the tentative allocation in the amount from the city of $20,695 to go into the 2024 CIP budget. And I need that approval to communicate to the DOT and the FAA by the end of this month. So,
That's outstanding, Chris. Thank you. Are there any questions?
and I will say, since 2015, we've received $3.7 million in grant funds at the airport. So this is the program that we continually follow.
Thank you, Chris. Any questions, or I'll entertain a motion?
Motion to approve.
A motion to approve by Mr. Garrett. Thank you, Norman. Is there a second?
Second.
Take a second from Mr. Gregory. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. That passes. Police, Chief Watts.
Thank you, Mayor. We're coming to the council tonight asking for your approval to move forward on the purchase of a forensic recovery for evidence device, also nicknamed as Fred. What this is a 72 terabyte hard drive computer that we utilize in downloading cell phones, iPads, computers, things of that nature. Currently, this year alone, we've already worked 30 cases. And that's, major cases, like I said, from child molestation to child pornography to homicides. And it usually takes now, on average, about 3 to 4 and even longer in dumping those phones. And what this computer will do for us will speed up those times. And already we have received accolades from Georgia State Patrol, Watkinsville. We're leading in our department in the surrounding area as it pertains to digital forensics and dumping that information. So again, seeking the council's approval to go ahead for the purchase of that in an amount of $22,623.76.
Thank you, Chief. Are there any questions for RV?
Is the funding for this just come out of the general supply budget?
Well, no, we did allocate in the investigative supplies. We have an allocation of $46,000 or $43,000, I think, as of to date in that line item budget, and that's what we're going to be pulling from.
But that's in the general.
That's in the general.
General operating, yes.
Yeah. I move approval.
Thank you,
The amount of $22,623.76.
Thank you, Mr. Bradley. I think, Norman, did you go?
I second it.
Sorry. Is there any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. That passes. Moving to Public Works, this is for the Walton Road sidewalk replacement discussion to Mr. Bailey.
Yes, sir. Thank you. So I put this on as a discussion topic as a request for approval or denial, and I truly want y'all to decide this, obviously. We have the LMIG project coming up, which is the repaving of Walton Road, probably sometime this fall based on schedule. The sidewalks that exist on Walton Road right now are not in the best of shape. They've been there, like I remember them doing the curb when I was in middle school, so it's sadly been a minute. Once we start milling that road, I'm afraid that it's going to tear up the edge of what exists now for a curb essentially on Walton Road. So we put a bid out to explore what the cost would be. The replacement of 3,164 feet of sidewalk plus the addition of 571 feet of sidewalk to extend it down to the last house plus curb and gutter. Low bid came back at $343,687.50. It's something that I really believe would make the road itself look sharp at the end of this. It has to precede the LMIG project. If we do deny it, then we can come back and make repairs as best as we can after the fact, just to kind of see what's going on. So it's essentially, I'm following you guys' lead on how we proceed with this. And any questions, I'll be glad to answer.
Are there any questions for Mr. Bailey?
Have we worked with this particular company before that came in on the low bid?
No, ma'am. I do know that the individual that would be running the project was former Public Works Director, I think, for Lincolnton, I believe it was, so that gave me a little bit of confidence. The range of bids were $343,000 to $869,000. And I don't have his bid in front of me, but his largest project, I believe, and I may be wrong here, was in Elbert County or somewhere near. We did reach out there, and they had good results working with them. So I feel confident in that regard. And then two, I also believe there's a portion in there that was bid for final grading, grassing and whatnot, that was for $52,000, I believe, that we could do in-house, having discussed with Jeremiah to save that 52 off of 343, so we're to 290 roughly, and try to peel back as much as we can to save as much as we can to get the most done possible.
So, are there any other questions before I jump in?
Yeah, I just had a question on, I know that what Chris is saying on LMIG, trying to tie this in together, but I think we've got a sidewalk plan somewhere. I just wonder, where does this fit in from what we've already looked at from a sidewalk plan? Is this included in what we already have, or is this something new?
They got existing sidewalks out there. I think he's talking about replacing the sidewalks they already have.
Right.
There's a lot that's in bad shape. I mean, we would have to go back and definitely redo some sections. I would like to do that. However, you're gonna have to pour them the way that they're done now. And that's what scares me, that kind of sloped curve. If you've been around through there, once you start milling that, you're gonna tear up sections, tear up different pieces, and I'm not real sure what we're gonna get into.
You're only asking for sidewalk money?
Yes, sir. It's demo, it's turnkey essentially, with us coming back and doing the grading and the,
This would be immediately after the LMIG project.
no, this would precede it. We would need to get this done prior. That's why we put a 30-day deadline on the construction of it. As far as it falling into a sidewalk plan, it wasn't on the immediate. We've tried to start kind of center of the city and identify, trouble area and start moving out within budget. So this is not a budgeted item, not in the capital for this year. It was just something when the LMIG hit, and looking at that, thought I'd take a shot in the opportunity.
Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'll make a motion to approve it. Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Garrett. Where am I? And a second by Mr. Boyce
Yeah.
to approve. Motion to approve and a second to approve. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, I just want to clarify the question I asked earlier. I mean, I know we've had a lot of discussion on sidewalk repairs and sidewalk replacements, and I understood that there was a plan laid out, and I just wonder where this fits into that. And if this replacement of $300,000, it may very well be the best place to spend it. I don't know that. I thought we had a plan to do this, and I was trying to figure
I
out
think the
how
plan
this
was
fits into the
for
plan.
new sidewalks.
No,
Yeah, we have a plan in place for it's anywhere from about 50 to 65,000 a year that we're going through, tearing out sidewalks, replacing. This is in addition to that. This is a totally separate project. Walton Road probably wouldn't have got hit except for little sections. This come about with a worry of milling, what it would do to the existing sidewalk, and we would have to come back and fix some sections. So it's in addition to, and it wouldn't hinder anything that we're doing within a plan.
So, Mr. Mayor, may I comment?
Yes, sir.
As I understand what we're saying, Mr. Bailey's saying, lots of times we do things out of sequence, and that's how we end up with a mess where it doesn't work right, it isn't functional, it doesn't look right, it's just a mess. So I think this is a good idea. Do it right the first time, and then you don't have to come back and redo it 2 or 3 times. So makes sense to me, even if it's out of sequence. But if we're gonna do the paving, why not get the sidewalks right while we're doing the street, and it all works together?
Right. Are there any more comments?
Just one additional question, is where would the 300,000 funding come from?
It'll be the 2019 SPLOST for transportation.
All in favor signify by saying,
Can I offer an amendment to that motion? And ask that the bid not include the grassing done by the city, which would reduce by
I
52,000?
think it was 52 right off.
Does that need to come in the form of an amended motion?
It would be a motion to amend the original motion that's on the floor.
That I'd like to offer.
okay, so say that one more time, please,
I'd
Lee.
like to offer a motion to amend the motion that is on the floor to exclude the 50-some-odd thousand that the city can take on in-house
Yeah.
of
Just-
grassing and grading. Is that it?
Yeah, we'll
And I don't know the exact off the top of my head because I don't have that pure bid, but we'll just exclude that line item. It's easy. It's designated as a separate part of it.
So I have a motion to exclude the 52,000. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
I have a motion by Ms. Malcolm and a second by Mr. Gregory. Is there any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. That passes.
Thank you.
Now, the actual motion, all in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. That passes. So the motion passes with the amendment. Moving to utilities, Mr. Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a third amendment to the power purchase contract with the solar project going on in South Georgia through MEAG. The reason this amendment is here is a couple of cities dropped out, and we are being allocated another 0.658950 megawatts in the project. That gets us closer to our original request. This item does have July 14th, the last date, but I've confirmed with MEAG that we're good, so has Logan. So that's what we're asking you to do, just approve this update in the contract, get us a little more solar. I just got an email from MEAG that this next week's expected to have very high constraints on the system, both generation and transmission. But as long as we have all our assets in place, we'll be good, but I wish we had this this week.
Thank you, Brian. Are there any questions? I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve the amendment to the power purchase contract.
A motion to approve by Mr. Little. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Garrett. Is there any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. That passes.
Thank you.
Utilities Reserve Sewer Treatment Capacity Agreement. Mr. Probst.
All right, thank you, Mayor. For the past couple years now, Rodney Middlebrooks, myself, we've been working with the good folks over at Down to Earth Properties LLC as they're developing a proprietary kind of wastewater treatment facility down on Vine Street in M1 zone property. And just since it's a really long project, lead time with a lot of complicated equipment, they've requested that we reserve out a maximum of 75,000 gallons per day in wastewater treatment up until they get it fully stood up. And I've attached the agreement there. But there's still some fine points probably we need to hit with our legal counsel and them and their legal counsel, really just about dates of execution and timeframes and things like that, pretty minor stuff. So I've asked for your support to approve this agreement for the reserve treatment capacity with them, subject to final technical negotiations with legal counsel and myself.
So to approve the 75,000.
Yes, but the general framework will just allow me to sign off on pending Paul's approval.
That works. Are there any questions?
Just as a comment, I had the opportunity to visit the site of this, and it's very impressive what they're doing out there. I wholeheartedly support this agreement, and I'll make the motion to approve the reserving up to, the 75,000 gallons per day, and subject to the agreement to be worked out by Mr. Probst and the attorneys.
I second that.
Thank you, Mr. Bradley. Thank you, Mr. Gregory. Is there any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. That passes. More utilities, sewer installation development agreement, Mr. Probst.
Yeah, so along the same lines, same group of folks, adding MTW Property Holdings LLC to the mix. But essentially, we're just defining how we're going to do the sewer connections within the confines of that property, and how they're going to work out their industrial pretreatment along with City of Monroe and EPD standards. Talking about really technical stuff primarily, but again, we've been discussing this with Mr. Middlebrooks and these folks for a couple of years now. And again, subject to final technical negotiations with city legal counsel and myself.
Got it. Are there any questions for Mr. Probst?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to say that I've also had a chance to be able to go out there and work with them, Hunter and Rick, and a few others, and I really am excited about this project, and I'd like to make a motion that we approve.
Thank you, Tyler. Second?
Second.
I'm going to give that one to Mr. Little. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. That passes. Moving to the natural gas main replacement bid approval, Mr. Bailey.
Thank you. So this is a request for the approval of Southern Pipeline, who was the low bidder at $352,562 for the replacement of 7,420 feet of natural gas main in the West Spring Street area. And it's replacing 2-inch steel and 4-inch steel from Carwood Drive to White Oak Lane on West Spring Street. This was budgeted in the 2023 capital plan for the gas main renewal. We had $300,000 there, and then Rodney's pulling the additional $52,560 out of his gas extension CIP program that was in for 2023. So, and I'll be glad to take any questions. And this one was sealed bid as well.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey. Are there any questions for Chris?
So this will run along Spring Street.
Yeah, all the way from Carwood to out at White Oak before you get to that where Tokyo is
What's
currently.
the timeline on the project?
Oof. I cannot remember what we put in there. A lot of it's going to kind of depend on what they hit, but I mean, I would imagine 60 days, give or take.
I was just thinking about traffic flow and school starting back. And
Yeah, well, the good thing is it should be in the right of way, so like outside of the streets.
you don't think it'll disturb the flow?
Shouldn't.
And this
Does, I'll blame Rodney.
necessary because
Not,
of
not
the
that we have a
survey?
choice, but
Yes.
Yes, sir.
It's one of those things because of your annual cathodic protection, leak surveys, we replace steel gas mains, and this one's popped up on the list.
Move to approve.
A motion to approve by Mr. Little. Is there a second?
Second.
Give that second to Mr. Gregory. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. That passes.
Thank you.
Moving to Mr. Calendar under new business. This is conditional use for 533 Plaza Drive. Brad?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The conditional use requested for the city council this evening is residential uses in the M1 zoning district. This property is located just south of the intersection with Plaza Drive and Mayfield Drive. Property is currently zoned M1 and contains an office building. The property is approximately 2.1 acres in size. The request is to convert the office building into 4 apartments. And just some background, and I'll provide my staff report has been submitted to council with all the details of my analysis, so I'll spare you all of the analysis. But the building was converted in approximately a year ago into 4 apartments without permits. And so now they're proposing to truncate down the actual size of the apartments themselves. And you can see on the screen behind you the floor layouts for the apartments. Some of the bedrooms will be abandoned, or be closed off in their proposal, so they've limited the number of bedrooms that are in the proposal versus what they have permitted illegally. And this is a snapshot of the building itself. It was a former ambulance service building. It was an office building that had 2 stories. And the Planning Commission and staff have taken a look at the request and made a recommendation of denial, primarily because it does not meet the R2 standards for apartment complexes greater than 3 units, which would require a 5-acre property. This is a 2-acre property in the M1 zoning district. And secondly, your conditional use standards warn against the domino effect of improper uses. And in this case, the recommendation was denial based on the unwanted domino effect of illegal and improper conversion of structures for residential uses. But if the request is approved, the staff does provide 4 conditions for council, for them to for the council to consider if it so is approved. Mr. Mayor, that's all that I have.
Thank you. Since that's in small print and these nice folks can't read it, do you
Sure,
mind
would you
going
like-
over those 4?
So we're proposing that if the request is approved by council, the following conditions are recommended. Number 1, the property owner shall obtain building permits and comply with all applicable building codes and life safety requirements. Number 2, the building shall substantially conform to the number of bedrooms and proposed limitations described in the applicant's narrative, regardless of any depictions shown on the floor plan, including in this application. Number 3, developer shall reduce the number of designated parking spaces on the site to a total of 8 spaces. The existing additional impervious surface not designated for parking shall be removed and replaced with landscaping and/or grassed areas. And number 4, any change to or modification to the building not included in the applicant's narrative shall result in this conditional use being automatically revoked. And those are the 4 conditions proposed if this conditional use request is
Thank you,
approved, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Calendar. Are there any questions for Brad?
I have a quick question. How many parking spots do they have now?
That's a good question. In the report, I believe I noted there were 18 parking spaces on the site because it was an office building.
So explain to me why you're trying to narrow it down to 8.
Because if it's multifamily, we only allow 1.5 parking spaces per unit for a multifamily building. And with your 120% parking max, that would be 8 spaces.
I have a question. If this had been properly permitted from the beginning, which steps have been taken to assure that everything, the safety elements of the multifamily apartments were met, that may not be met after the fact?
I'm not.
Okay,
I
during the
didn't
permitting
grasp that question.
process, is the inspection process during the permitting process allow for inspections that assure the safety of residents?
If this had been a valid use of the property and the proper permitting had been done and gone through, there would have been an inspection process and then a final certificate of completion and then occupancy granted to the property had there been a proper steps taken to properly permit the property. But it would have required this council's approval in some form before that step could have ever been taken.
But since that did not occur, is it possible now to retroactive, if you will, do the inspections to assure safety of residents?
That would be difficult. I would assume that since there's been quite a bit of number of walls added, electricity added, you're talking about removal of structures or having possibly some engineer sign off saying that it meets all of our building requirements. Someone would have to take responsibility, other than the city's inspections, making assumptions that whatever's inside the wall is meeting our ordinance.
Are there any other questions or comments?
Would there be a let's assume that got passed. Would there be a reduction in the amount of apartments?
I think that's council's discretion if you want to grant 4 apartments. What they're proposing, and in the screen here, maybe it makes a little more sense, but you see these blue outlines that are shown here on the screen? I'm using my laser pointer. So these are finished bedrooms, and they're proposing in this case to not use that bedroom because these bedrooms have no window access. They have no emergency egress to anything. These are not safe bedrooms as they are finished now. So they're proposing to limit this apartment to a 1-bedroom, 2-bath. So there's the bedroom. They're proposing to add a window here. That's this lower floor apartment. Then if I move over to this apartment, this one has 2 finished bedrooms that face a concrete wall. They have no emergency access at all. These are not safe. So they're making this a studio apartment. So, I mean, the alternative could be to remove the wall structures themselves and open the apartment up. That's a possibility to comply with what they've shown you. I mean, the square footage would increase, but if they want to do a studio apartment, they're going to have to get rid of these bedrooms. There's a substantial amount of structural change that would have to happen. The best bet would be these upper floor apartments could get windows added to them to comply, but the lower story ones are certainly ones that may face substantial issues in compliance with any building codes.
So we're assuming that unless people wanted to stay all in the same room, the same amount of people, whoever's bedroom that was would not be able to stay in there anymore.
If you're referring to a lower floor, lower floor apartment there, that would be the case.
Are there any other comments?
Mr. Callender, on those bedrooms that they're proposing to close off, that had no window, what space is that going to become?
They've not indicated in their application what that space will become. They've not indicated whether or not those walls will be removed or not. I'm sure the applicant can address that question.
Is it not difficult to patrol if those walls are not removed? Is it not very difficult to ensure that those don't end up being used as bedrooms after the fact?
To answer that question, the best that I could would be once the city's part in this, let's say that the council approves this request, we grant permits, we do inspections, and we leave the premises, grant certificates of occupancy, there's no guarantee these structures won't be completed and filled out in the manner that they already have been without any permits to this point.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions for Brad?
My next question is, when I look at that first graph you sent up there, you said this is how many acres?
It's a little over 2 acres.
But what's next to that 2 acres?
Could you help me out there? When you say next to it, we're talking about north, south, east, west, along Plaza Drive?
Do you realize the whole Plaza Drive ain't nothing but apartments?
Right, so which
Then
property are
2 or 3.
you referring to that is next to the property?
Go back to the first slide. To the right of that building, if you're going down Plaza from Mayfield, everything out there is apartments, other than 2 or 3 buildings. So the whole Plaza Drive is actually apartments.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that whatsoever. Those are existing land uses on R2 zone property.
So my thoughts is, if everything out there is apartments, people having problem finding places to stay, it looked like we should have compassion to try to figure out a way to help some people that may not have anywhere to actually stay at this point.
Mr. Garrett. Ladies and gentlemen, 1 second, please. Mr. Garrett, after we close the public hearing, we'll come back to the council discussion only. So this is just questions for Brad right now.
Gotcha.
Are there any other questions for Brad? Hearing none, I'll declare this portion of the meeting open for purpose of public input. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak in favor? Yes, sir, Mr. Ross.
Thank you. May I approach the dais?
Yes, sir, you may. Thank you.
It's all right, we'll share.
No, I've got one for you. I don't want to. There we go. Thank you. Mr. Mayor and Council, Chuck Ross. I'm at 10 Lumpkin Street with the firm of Powell and Edwards in Lawrenceville. I have the absolute blessing tonight to represent Mr. Kailash Tandrian in this conditional use permit. I think it's important to remember this is a conditional use permit. This is not a rezoning. Residential uses are allowed in this zoning district. However, we do have to come before this council to be granted the conditional use permit. Now, I do want to just spend most of my time trying to clear up a few things. First of all, my client purchased this property after it had already been converted into the 2 upstairs apartments, and the bottom had already been stubbed in for the kitchen and plumbing. In fact, Just skipping ahead on your packet there, you go back, I'm trying to be quick, about 6 pages in, you'll actually see a Zillow listing from before my client purchased this property, where it's listed then as a 2-bedroom, 1.5 bath property. It was already done. My client did not come in and do this trying to skirt the law. I want to be clear about that. My client initially purchased this property with the idea of making it his church. And he is part of the Rama Krishna Davi Aman Seva Dham Mandir Church. And several of the members are here tonight in support as well. And it was obviously a little bit too small for his congregation, but he was approached by a lady that asked if there was any way she could stay there. My client, not knowing any better, being a former New York police officer and retired to here, allowed her to do that and ultimately allowed several other individuals to stay there. Unfortunately, one of the individuals did, I'm not trying to hide the ball, one of the family people that lived there had an individual staying there that had a warrant for their arrest. And when the police came, they were notified and notified the planning department about this apartment, and that was brought to my attention through my client. They immediately complied, got everyone out of the apartments, and we began working in earnest with Mr. Callender, who's been very kind to work with. And if you notice in his staff report, a lot of it is positive. It tells you that it fits the comprehensive plan for this area, that it would not be a strain on any resources, that it would not cause any problems. His only 2 concerns, really, that he brought up in here was one, that it was done, in particular, that it was done without permits, and they don't want to have a domino effect. And again, we've come to do the right thing. We're asking to come before you and to have to get those permits. My client is agreeing to every one of those conditions. If they don't meet the life safety codes, then he doesn't get the church and him don't get the conditional use permit. They want it to be right. They actually, on the page right before the Zillow page, they engaged Mr. Baldwin, Robert Baldwin, who's an engineer, who states that the facility itself is structurally sound, and it would be a structurally sound area. Now, indeed, there were concerns about life safety, as Mr. Callender noted to you. We've addressed where there will be windows, and we will meet all codes. If that means we need to tear down walls inside, we will. We believe we'll be under more scrutiny than many individuals. I'm sure, like my council I work with, we have problems with a company called Pad Split, where people are coming in and renting out rooms without any permits or any licenses. In this case, these are going to be under the microscope, watching them, watching to see what's going on here. My client wants to do the right thing. Initially, he was just trying to help people that were down on their luck, but now the church has actually got a program going called Get a Second Chance, and basically what they're trying to do, it's not a homeless shelter, but they are trying to help those people who are down on their luck, who aren't able to qualify for a regular apartment, and they work with the people in the church who come in and they counsel them about finances and about jobs. They give them rides, they provide food, and this is a stepping stone for them. Now, it's only 4 apartments, but it's certainly a start. Just to show you, if you look deeper into the packet, you will see inside, this is not a slum. These are very nicely appointed. And again, they're going to have to meet all life codes. Mr. Callender isn't going to let this pass without having to meet those codes. But that expense is on Mr. Tandrian to do that. And he's willing to do that, and we believe that he should be given a chance to do that. On the back 2 pages, there are just a couple summaries, as I know I don't have a lot of time, but I'm happy to answer any questions from you all. Even for Siri.
I have a couple of questions.
Yes, sir.
Get a Second Chance, what date did that start?
That is actually, Get a Second Chance is actually an LLC that was created right after it was brought to the city's attention. I sat down with Mr. Tandrian and indicated to him that it certainly could not just be used as to provide houses, that in fact it would be better if it was something, he told me about his church and the work with his church, and I suggested that that would be a great opportunity to tie that in with the work the church had already been doing. I know they've had programs where they go out and kids can't get picked up at school, taken to the doctor, and they've using this to build upon that.
And what is the rent?
I don't know that there's been a rent amount set for this program because this is This is new. This is not what helping out the folks that were there before. Once I explained to them, we talked to Mr. Callender, we realized that, something new had to happen. So that really hasn't been established yet. I suspect it's on an ability to pay type system.
So the people that are living there now will no longer be able to live there?
There's no one living.
The people who lived there previously will no longer be able to live there because it's a change of program?
Well, right now, they've all had to move out, all of them. They've all been moved out. There's no one there per our agreement with the city. So that would be something, if they qualified for the program, then they might be able to stay there.
How do you qualify for the program?
I assume that it's something to do, the church is going to.
This is a well-established program?
No, I would not say it's the church is a well-establisted church. It's
And they've been doing this for a while?
They've been doing services similar to this.
So they have a program?
So they do have a program. As I said, they've just extended it to include this new facility that Mr. Tandrian had after we discussed.
So, Mr. Ross, I have a
Yes.
question. And let me preface it by saying I don't have any problem with folks living in industrial areas if that's what they want to do. I think that's a reasonable alternative, particularly considering the housing issues we have. My concern about this thing is focused on safety.
Absolutely.
And I saw the page that the engineer submitted. It certifies absolutely nothing about the life safety code. He's
Absolutely.
just saying the building itself is structurally sound. So, as I understand it, there's been no actual inspection of the building to determine whether or not there is compliance with the life safety codes. That's the reason the permits are required in the first place.
Absolutely.
So, is your client willing to allow the city of Monroe's inspectors, whether it's city agents or independent contractors, to enter the premises and fully inspect it for the life safety
Absolutely,
situation,
Councilman. That's what, it's actually one of the conditions that Mr. Callender built in there is that.
Well, it was a little ambiguous because it didn't really address the inspection part. I don't know how you know whether or not you have violations if nobody gets in it to inspect it. You see what I'm getting at?
I understand what you're saying, Councilman, but, we would be, my
He's
client is
willing to
wide
do
open to full inspections, and I think it said the permitting process is what Mr. Callender had initially recommended, and that's what we
Because
anticipated.
This is the thing. I mean, I think the city, number one, we have an obligation to try to help people have housing. But number two, we certainly have an obligation to make sure that that housing is safe.
100%.
And we don't want somebody to burn up in the place because the wiring is defective. It's already in the walls. Nobody can determine whether or not it's safe. We need to do that.
I agree, Councilman. I think that's what the condition says, is the way I read the condition, is that you have to meet the requirements just like any other apartment. In fact, I think it's better because you have people out there who are running boarding houses, who are renting out rooms that aren't being subject, and it's going on. My client has cooperated 100% once he was notified of the issue by the city.
I will say that I did get the opportunity to actually go to that property, and he do have fire detectors in every room, including the hallways, like code actually permits. And he do have fire extinguishers throughout the houses. I did ask council members to actually go that said they didn't have time or something came up. So it ain't like we didn't actually have opportunity, because I asked several people about actually going to visit that property itself. And I don't think these pictures do the property actually just from when you actually see it in person. Them properties look 10 times better than something that I see in some of these other apartments.
Mr.
We'll
Garrett.
say that.
Mr. Garrett, we'll discuss this as a council, but this is just for public comment. So if you have any questions for Mr. Ross?
Well, my biggest concern, the reason I ask about the program, is because we don't want to displace people if we can possibly help it. But what my concern is that somebody's gotten into a situation that maybe that could have been prevented, and now people will lose housing because now a program is in place to make something fit. And so what my concern is, my question is, what happens if some of these people do lose housing?
Again, right now, they're not allowed to stay there at all. That's the problem. I mean, Mr. Calendar will tell you, the police came in, and we had numerous conversations, and they're not allowed to stay there. So, I mean, if you don't pass this, those people are out anyway.
I'm sorry, you're dodging the question. My
No, I'm
point
not
is-
trying to at
Yes,
all.
you are. My point is that the program that all of a sudden exists, how are we assured that people will not lose homes from it?
I don't know that I can assure you that no one will lose a home.
And then how do we decide who goes in there? And then who's to oversee that?
That's the church's program.
The church, I'm confused, was the church created at the same time?
Oh, no, the church has been in existence since 2010.
Is it an LLC also?
It is. Well, I believe, no, it's a corporation. Actually, I have the documents, I believe, here. They have multiple locations.
Is this their first project such as this for housing?
It is. And again, I'm not trying to hide the ball here. My client is involved with the church and was doing this out of the kindness of his heart. When they were notified that he couldn't do this, he has immediately done what he has asked, taken the people out of there. And we sat down and had a meeting, and I suggested to him that it be something that he told me about all the programs that his church was already doing these exact things to help people. I said it made sense to combine it with the housing. That's how it came to be. It wasn't invented to cover anything. It was come up with as an alternative to possibly make, that's what I do as a zoning lawyer, is they came to me with a problem that they couldn't use this as it is. And I said, well, here are some opportunities to make this work. And I worked with them, and that's what we presented in our application.
Could I ask what the rental rate was for the people that were displaced?
I don't know the answer to that. I can certainly ask my client and get that information for you, but I don't know that right off the top of my head.
I'm interested in knowing that as well.
Would your client be willing to, I understand this lower level is already built out.
Correct.
Are they willing to go to the expense to reconfigure this to make where there is egress for the bedrooms?
Absolutely. They already, that's what I think Mr. Calendar was showing on there. We have designed egress windows into each of the.
But what you were showing did not, there were rooms left there.
And certainly.
There's no assurance.
No, those will have to be reconfigured. I don't think we'd be able to get the permit or pass the inspections if there was anything that could be used otherwise.
Because that's underground, isn't it?
No, ma'am, it's open to the back. It's in your
It
packet. It's daylight. It's open to the back.
If you drive out there, Lee, what you'll realize is what you're seeing on the front is really the upstairs.
Yeah.
If you come down this drive and come in the back, that's when you see the,
I've been to this building, but it's been years ago, but from the back, I can't see because of that shed that's in front or something. It's another structure, or maybe that is the part.
Marked as an office.
So,
Their diagram, I don't know.
so again, we'll have council discussion is after this. We're all directed towards Mr. Ross right now.
I would like to know what the rental rates were previously.
My
name is Kailash Chandran, may I?
You're gonna, hang on.
I'm gonna, if you don't mind, would you spell your name? Because I'm not gonna get it right when I'm trying to take the notes. Yes, sir, please. Yes, sir. I'm getting there. Yes, sir. Thank you. Yes, sir. Okay. Mr. Tandrian.
Tandrian, that's good, very good.
Okay, the pricing on those apartments?
It ranges from about 1,300 because all the utilities are included, and I allow a couple of families to be able to come together to live there so they can afford, because they couldn't afford to rent a place by themselves. And some of them, when they approached me, they didn't have any money. I let them give me as they go along because I seen their need, and to take away the homelessness from their situation, if I could help them. And at that point, I purchased this property and this situation was existing. When I was painting and nicing up the property, in fact, when I purchased the property, it was in a deplorable condition outside, looks, scraped, paint, did whatever I needed to do to make it good. And one young lady, Miss, can you please stand up, if you please permit her to stand up, was one of the tenants that did this, dying to go back to her home.
Yes, ma'am.
She approached me and she says she's been looking for a place to live over 1 year and nobody would consider her. So I respectfully beg that you all help us out in this purpose of trying to assist. And the range is from $1,300 to $1,800 with all the utilities, and it depends on how many family got together, because a lot of landlord would not even consider it, their credit. This is a second chance for life LLC that we are offering from our church, and I have a lot of the members of the temple here with me as well to verify this. We are a legitimate organization. In fact, I have been with the Radha Krishna Mandir at 220 Cherry Hill Road, where our background is Hinduism, but we have an open mind and we have universal service to God, as God is one, and He's called by many names. And my background is Indian, as you all could see, in courtroom is actually packed with our people, and we live in the city of Monroe and on the outskirts of Monroe, and we're doing the right thing. And we're not trying to bleed people, and this is not trying to make money and suck money out of anybody. It's trying to help them. However, there are expenses that come with this, and I don't want it to really pose that kind of a problem with the committee. Hey, you're spending all the church money here to take care of these people when they get in a little bit, and I'm trying to assist to pull it together to put them in there to live. That's why it ranges. And then some of them, like Miss Easy Brung back there, she has told me, my son, I've never lived in somewhere as nice as this place. And the safety, they have exits and entrances. I bear that in mind when I had little work done on it, because most of this thing was existing. And I said, let me make it nice. Human beings are gonna live in it. I can help some people with the situation. Our mission is service thy duty, reward not thy concern. However, in this situation, if you don't charge any rent, you would not be able to maintain the property. And we know on the average of $1,800 of rent, the records are here at City Hall, that I paid on behalf of housing these people for about a year. And everything is up to date. I'm a retired police officer from New York City. I've seen terrible things, including 9/11, and I don't want to put anybody in that situation. My motto, and our motto, is treat people the way you want people to treat you and your family. And we're trying, they're all my people here. Some of them found places, but they come back here just to support the project, because they know they have lots of fellow brothers and sisters that out there that don't have a place to live, including I asked Miss Cindy Little to please, I have sent a few of them over there on recommendation of Mr. Patrick to go over there and try to find housing for them so that we can vacate the premises immediately in honoring their safety codes and whatever it is. But I want you all to please understand, City Council, Mr. Mayor, with great respect, this has been existing. I didn't take it upon myself to go there and create it. This was being advertised since 2020 to be rented, the apartment, on the persons were living in these places. It just needed, downstairs were built, a lot of these walls were there. I just make it nice and good where people can live and bear safety in mind to make sure that they have entrances, exits, fire extinguishers, smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors, because I don't want to see the things I've seen in my life that went on in New York City. And this place is, Mr. Norman Garrett, Councilman Norman Garrett, had the opportunity, because I says, please come see what we're doing. We're not a bogus organization. We're just trying to do good for humanity.
Thank you, Mr. Townsend.
Thank you.
And I,
We have another, for Mr. Ross or Mr. Townsend?
Mrs. Andre, I have one question. How many meters were on this building?
There are 1 meter that was on it, and I still kept the 1 meter for the simple reason these people couldn't afford. They don't have proper credit. They don't have the money to turn on lights and whatever in their name. And being at a commercial building, I honestly thought commercial, because that's my failure for my ignorance. Because less than 400 feet, there are 2 apartment complexes. There are Ashton Point and Arnold Point. So I thought, oh, more than 2 apartments equals commercial. That's what I thought, and I thought it was good to do until Mr. Patrick called me one morning and just said as I was in my prayer room, my shrine, doing prayer. So I came and said, yes, I'm trying to help a few old folks that's displaced and poor folks that they don't have anywhere to live, and that's why. And out of compassion, the first person that went in, can I ask her to stand, please?
Yes, sir.
Can you please stand, Mama? Can you please stand? Okay, thank you. She has a little problem. And also the sister-in-law. She lives there. You can sit right there. And also the daughter. They're all, and the grandson.
Thank you, folks.
She has these children that she's taking care of. She approached me and she says she don't have anywhere to live in the city of Monroe. Nobody would rent to her. If I can please rent this place to her and it's existent, I feel that it was such a wrong thing to break out the kitchen that was existing there and the bathroom just to make it commercial office space because it was occupied by people residing there. And this is the lady's daughter that gets seizures. She has to keep an eye, She has to keep an eye on her, so somebody's always got to be watching her. So they're getting together, and then the sister-in-law assists to make whatever sacrifice she needs, whatever, to accommodate herself, and to pitch in together to pay the rent.
Thank you, Mr.
And they were very happy. If you can ask any of them to speak one.
Well, we'll come back to that in one moment.
Mr. Mayor, I did want to answer Mr. Gregory. The church was incorporated September 27, 2010.
Okay, but the Second Chance, Get a Second Chance LLC was after they discovered this. Okay. You good?
I'm good.
Okay. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor of this conditional use?
Mayor, just point of order.
Yes, sir.
Mayor, just point of order. The applicant and those wishing to speak in favor are generally limited to 10 minutes and generally limited to 10 minutes in opposition. Of course, this council has discretion as to any extra above and beyond that. We've certainly gone beyond the 10 minutes, but there's a lot of questions
Right.
from council, so we kind of were trying to give some discretion there. But the 10 minutes of general speaking in favor has concluded, but you, of course, certainly can take anything that this council wishes to hear.
Would anybody mind if I give 5 more minutes?
Go ahead.
Yes,
And a
ma'am.
little, had her hand up to speak.
My name is Yvette Nicholson, and I have 3 kids that live with me. Actually, together we had 7 kids. I live with my husband. We were only able to bring in 3 of our kids. We went to every RAC program. We went to different organizations trying to find housing. And when we came behind this Kailash right here, he didn't ask for our social security numbers to get a credit rating or anything. We had to pay our little down deposit and our first month rent, and that was it. And we were able to move our kids into a house. We were homeless for over 6 months because the house that we was living in, they sold it off underneath the person that was, they sold it off underneath us. And we have been living there for over 4 years. We went from a $1,200 rent, but we paid for utilities and everything, so it equaled out to about what we was paying with Mr. Kailash here. And we had a place to go. Our kids had a place to stay that was not across the railroad tracks here. They were in a safe environment. And then we had to get uprooted because of some craziness. And it wasn't fair to our family whatsoever. This apartment was better. I'm not gonna say it was better than my house, because my house was beautiful. But this is better than what we have been coming across to get into. a bad credit, you can't get into anywhere. 600 or more you have to have, and people have had, I went through a divorce, and when I went through my divorce, it messed up my credit-wise, and we were struggling. And he came to our rescue. This place is a magnificent place to raise kids and to live. We have an exit in, we have an exit going out, we have smoke detectors, we have smoke extinguishers, everything. So it's not a bad place to live.
Thank you, Ms. Nicholson. Since we only have just a couple more minutes, I want to give somebody else opportunity. Anyone else like to speak in favor?
Cindy got her hand up.
Ms. Little?
Somebody there and somebody here.
Yes, we'll go 1 minute for you, then we'll have Cindy come up. Is that all right? Ready, set, go. Yes, ma'am. Okay, hey, Cindy, I'm sorry, your last name?
Thing.
Thank you.
Well, this is all interesting, the rezoning of this property. You hear a lot of good
Could
stories.
you please remove your hand from your mouth?
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
You hear a lot of good stories, but I think we're kind of missing what's important. What's important is that he is trying to save people. And it makes me emotional because I'm hearing she was homeless. And the young lady prior, she was homeless. She's sleeping in a car. And then we have a guy who's actually trying to help these people. And you asked about the meter.
Meter, yes.
Okay, I live in Woodlake, and I have a meter, and I don't have a fire extinguisher, and I have 2 smoke detectors, and when the battery goes, it goes, okay? Now, what he's trying to do is help people. We spend more time and effort into helping a puppy. We go to court, we fight for puppies and cats. So why we have to fight for zoning? If he has to pay a fine, let him pay it. And let him move on, because what he's doing for the community is what's important. What he's doing, changing everybody's life, that's important. We all can make every day a beautiful day. We all go through rough days. However, this is something can be fixed. You asked the question, how did he buy the apartment building and turn it into such? No, that apartment building was rented prior. Across the street, you have those 2 apartments, which is not the best apartment ever. However, they keep it filthy. He keeps his place very clean. It hurts me to see that we have to come to this place, try to rezone that. I don't think so. I think you all need to consider the fact that everyone trying to make the city of Monroe not Atlanta. We're not trying to do that. We're trying to keep people out of cars.
Mayor,
Trying to
there's
keep
1 minute
people-
remaining for.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Cindy. Let me jump on the other Cindy real quick. Cindy Little. Thank you, Paul.
1 minute is just quickly to say I'm here representing Cindy Little. And Mr. Ash and I have talked several times, and I am one that feels like, you know, we have to abide by whatever the rules are, and he wants to do that. He truly wants to do whatever needs to be done to make this right. And I just pray that he gets that opportunity. These are really desperate times. I know that personally from the people I serve, and the medically fragile that are dying on our streets because we have no place for them. So I just ask you, it's hard to continue to see families in their cars, and the motels are full, and we're doing everything we can. A shelter is not the answer, not in our city, because we don't have bus transportation. What we need here is transitional housing and a place that I can put people, because the motels are so expensive. Mr. Ash is trying to do something that will help that. I admire that he has got a little program to go and to help with that. But it's really tough right now, y'all. And it's not just City of Monroe, it's all over the United States. But anything that we can do to help get some of these people off the street and to give them that hand up Now, understand there are those that I work with every day that are going to always be our children. And I keep giving them sleeping bags, making sure they've got water and those things. But he's trying to get a place to get these folks so that they can get a life and a forever home. So whatever you can do, please understand that he wants, I know in my heart from talking to him, that he truly wants to do the right thing. So thank you for listening to him and giving him your time and understanding that he truly wants to do the right thing. So
Thank you, Cindy. Is there anyone who'd like to speak against this modification? Okay, I'll declare this portion of the meeting closed. We'll be back to revisit that in just a couple minutes. Moving to 408 Ninth Street, Mr. Callender.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a request from R2 to R1A. This property is at 408 Ninth Street, which is essentially on the southwest corner of Pine Park and Knight. It's an older R2 zone property in the city, and as you know, most of the R2 zone properties have single-family residences on them. Some of them are larger sized, and this is one of them that's large enough to create a new lot on the property. In order to do so, though, they need that R1A rezone. So they're asking the city council tonight for a request from R1A from R2 to R1A, and the planning commission recommendation is approval as submitted without conditions.
Thank you, Mr. Callender. Are there any questions for Brad?
No questions, Mr. Mayor, but I need to put on the record that I am recusing myself from any discussion or voting on that matter because of my affiliation with Hope Monroe.
Thank you, Mr. Dickinson, and thank you for reminding me because I was just going to go right through it. That being said, no questions. I'll open this meeting for public input. Is there anyone who'd like to speak in favor of this rezone? Yes, sir.
Yes, my name is Greg Davis, and I talked to Larry earlier, and we are, I live in Athens, but my son, who is a social worker in Atlanta, and he can not only not buy a house in Atlanta, he can't even afford to rent in Atlanta. And his job is to find homes for homeless vets. So anyway, we have got a contract, and we'll close on Friday on 405 9th Street. And he will be living there. I certainly understand the problems of people who need a place to rent. And we have that same issue in Athens. But we also need affordable housing. And so whatever, and I don't have any idea of the plan for this place. What I'm hoping is that as we develop this historic area, the mill area, that we do protect the integrity of the neighborhood, the character of the neighborhood, and as we hopefully over time transition to both rent but also affordable permanent housing for folks to buy. And because I'm for both. I certainly believe that people need the opportunity to rent at affordable rates, but I think that people ought to be able to purchase at affordable rates. And so I just want to kind of introduce myself in behalf of my son, as we are going to be, well, he is, but I will be there a lot as he becomes a new homeowner for in Monroe. And so if this will help protect the nature of that neighborhood, then I know you'll make the right decision.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you coming out, Greg. Is there anyone else in the audience who'd like to speak in favor of this rezone?
Mr. Mayor, could someone from the ownership of this lot speak to their plans for it?
Ms. Krosick?
Good evening, everyone.
Welcome back.
I'm Sadie Krosick, and I'm a part of the Hope Monroe nonprofit. So our intention, we currently obviously own the whole lot, And we've renovated the small house that's existing, and we saw this as an opportunity to create another parcel that would fit a home, where we could do infill development, either Hope Monroe, fulfilling our mission for having affordable housing, or selling it to a like entity that would be interested to do the same. So that's our intention, is just to be able to make this lot available for another home that would fit the character of that street.
Is it Hope Monroe's intent to actually build another house here or to sell that lot?
We're actually not decided at this point.
Sorry.
We're undecided. Hope Monroe has not made decisions either way. This was just the first step to make this even a possibility.
Thank you, Sadie. Are there any other questions for Sadie? Sorry. Okay, take off.
I have one. If I'm not
tried.
mistaken, this lot size is conforming to many other lot sizes within that area.
Yes, definitely.
The new proposed lot size.
Yes.
Okay.
This is the one lot, I mean, it's shown being subdivided, so it was a very long rectangle.
Right. Okay.
Thank you, Sadie.
Are there any talks about working with any other local nonprofits to kind of help make this a reality, or is there?
Yes, I mean, we've discussed partnering with Habitat, this would be a great, something like that, or, I mean, there's lots of options. None of that's been decided, but the intent would be in keeping with Hope's mission, which was to provide affordable housing within the city of Monroe.
That'd be great.
I wasn't going to say have a seat because I thought you were going to pop another question. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor of this rezone? Is there anyone who'd like to speak against this rezone? Hearing none, I'll declare that portion of the meeting closed. We'll take no action at the moment, but come back to it in just a minute. Moving to zoning ordinance code text amendment number 16. Mr. Callender?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be brief on this proposal to amend zoning ordinance, your zoning ordinance amendment number 16. This is in response to House Bill 1405 that was approved last year. It went into effect in July. And what it does is we're changing the procedures for your corridor design overlay district certificate of appropriateness, the application process. We're made those modifications in compliance with that House bill, including modifying the types of published notices that must be complied with also with that House bill. And we've added public hearing and appeal procedures for all corridor design overlay action procedures or actions for any appeals to the City Council. And all of those changes are in compliance with House Bill 1405, and I'll spare the council of reading the details of the ordinance itself. But these are to get everything in compliance with that House bill. That's all that I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Callender. Are there any questions for Brad? Hearing none, I'll declare this portion of the meeting open for the purpose of public input. Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak for this rezone? Anyone who'd like to speak against? I'll declare that portion of the meeting closed. We'll come back to revisit in just a moment. Moving to new business application, beer and wine package sales, Quick Pick Foods, applicant Narati Paul. I think I saw this gentleman earlier. If you would have stand right there for me. Is the application in order, Paul?
Yes, Mayor, the application's in order.
I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
A motion to approve by Mr. Garrett. Is there a second? Second by Ms. Crawford. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Thank you, sir. Appreciate your coming in. Moving to the application of spirituous liquors and beer and wine on-premise consumption at Will Henry's Monroe. Applicant is Herbert Daniel Clack Jr. and Christopher Dwayne Wilson at 138 North Midland Avenue. Is application in order, Paul?
Yes, that application is in order, Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Is the applicant here? Mr. Clack, how are you? Would you like to say anything? All right, thanks. Wait right there. I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion by Mr. Garrett to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a second by Mr. Boyce. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. That passes. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you coming in. Good to see you. Moving to Historic Preservation Commission appeal at 1251 South Madison Avenue. Mr. Callender.
I'll go ahead and take this. So we had a formal appeal for the historic preservation decision denying the demolition request for 1251 South Madison. And you see in your packet, there was a letter addressed to me formalizing this appeal. I believe we have the applicant and the appellate here.
Yes, sir, please.
My name is Rob Goodis. Good afternoon,
Thank you, Rob, for coming in.
Logan, Council. My name is Rob Goodis. I am a managing partner and director of Arnold Properties. I'm also Mr. Harry Arnold's son-in-law, married to his middle daughter, Sarah. I've been active in the Monroe community for over 30 years. I am also in charge of the daily operations of Arnold Properties and its LLCs and LPs coordinated. In regards to 1251 South Madison, myself and my associates have painstakingly tried to work with the confines of the Historical Commission. We made application for demolition. We recognized the fact that the property was in the historical area. We did visitations with the committee, with the historical committees. Several of the members did come out and look and identified the fact that the house was in very, very poor shape. There was very good interest from the Historical Society about the type of roofing and the type of construction, and it was always my intentions to try to be as cooperative as I could with it. In our analysis and in our estimations, the ability to transform that property into a business proposition for our type of business, it was just not appropriate. The conditions were so deplorable and dangerous and not safe, to Mr. Dickinson's comments earlier about safety. It was not safe, and it is not safe. And it's our intentions to ask for the continuance of a demolition permit. Now, I also want to state that, for the record, we did commit to making 1251, the land, as a green space. I don't understand in my petition to the Historical Society that it was not taken seriously. So I do want to address that, and I will take questions after my comments, that we were committed to making it a green space. Also, we put it out there that to people who would want the house itself, we would help financially move it from its location to whatever other location that a potential buyer would want of the house. We also had we had companies that would entertain the idea of moving it. We had one interested party they did not pursue. I want to state for the record, and I have evidence of this, my final Historical Society representation and presentation was on May 25th. On June 27th, the next meeting, and I have evidence of this and I can pass it around, and it's also a public record, that across the street, 1250 South Madison made application for a demolition through the Historical Society. They presented them with a plan for new construction. I repeat, new construction in the Historical Society, in the historical footprint. I wanted a pure demolition permit for nothing more than to create a green space. That's what I wanted. They got approved for 1250 South Madison, and if everybody who knows that area knows, it's a pink house that sits on the corner. It's directly across the street from mine. I'm in the spirit of trying to work with this, with the Historical Society, with the city of Monroe. I spent 30 years of my reputation, my family's reputation, of working with this city. I ask each and every one of you to ask anybody who works in the city administration, through the code office, through any of the code officers, to the police, to anybody who I am and what I am and my intentions in trying to do the right thing. Now, the right thing is to try to keep safety. That is my goal. 1251 is not a safe place. It needs to come down. The cost to redo it is not appropriate. It's just not appropriate. And people have asked me why, and I keep telling them why. So I'm open for any questions, any comments.
Thank you, Rob, for coming in. Are there any questions?
I have one. So, Mr. Gudis, as you know, I am a lawyer, so I'm going to ask you a lawyer question. The standard for this body to consider this appeal is abuse of discretion. This is not a de novo proceeding. So unless we find that the HPC abused its discretion in its decision, there's nothing for us to do. I didn't hear anything in your presentation that indicated an abuse of discretion. So how did the HPC abuse its discretion?
I'm only asking for consistency, Mr. Dickinson. I'm not a lawyer. I'm honest, I'm not a lawyer. I grew up with a family of attorneys. But no, I am not a lawyer. All I'm asking for is consistency. In my humble, not legal judgment, because I am not an attorney, as I stated, consistency is all I ask for. Cooperation and consistency. When asked of me to be cooperative and do right by the city code of any ordinance, I make every effort to comply. Every effort. I made every effort to delay my final vote to the HPC in order to try to make things happen. When another individual right across the street from me doesn't have to go through what I went through.
Well, I don't know.
Well,
I'm
only.
How did that body abuse its discretion?
That's up for you to decide whether it abused the discretion. Well,
I just got to tell you, Mr. Goodis, I don't see any evidence that it abused its discretion.
Mr. Dickinson, with all due respect, that's why I'm here.
No.
Consistency is what I'm asking for.
So anyway.
Ask how long Arnold Properties is on this property?
Property has been in our ownership. So I don't have the exact date, but it's over 20 years. We also own the property contiguous to it at 301 Pennell Road. We also own the property diagonally across to it, those newer townhouses that are right there.
May I ask what you plan to do after you demolish the house with the property?
Green space.
Just a green space?
Just a green space.
Who have you committed to make the green space?
HPC. I made that commitment to the Historical Society several times, in person, at the site, and in front of their governing body.
I'm gonna make a comment that I live not that far from that building, and we got more people running in that building in and out at night than anything. I'm gonna make a motion that we,
Wait, one second.
Put a motion in.
We're gonna let him go through this, and then we'll have a seat, and then we'll all discuss. Are we all finished with questions for
I
Mr.
just have
Gudis?
one, and that is, how long has it been since you've had a renter in there?
7 years.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gudis. You may have a seat. I'll open the floor to council members only for discussion.
I've seen people running in and out that building all times of the night. To me, the best thing he could actually do is tear that building down. If they're not gonna redo it, then it don't need to actually be there. The fact that they've committed to making a green space is more than fine with me, because I don't think a lot of them actually see people running in and out that building, from taking stuff, putting it in the building, to coming back out, selling it next door. I see this on a continuous basis. So I want to see that building actually gone, in my opinion. It needs to be gone.
I just disagree with you, Mr. Garrett. That house is certainly a unique example of Victorian architecture. I'm fairly familiar with it. That house could be restored. Is it suitable to move it? That's a whole different question, but it can certainly be restored. And I know what I'm talking about because I've restored about 19 of them.
Well, I think he'd be willing to sell it to you if you're willing to buy it.
Well, I'm willing to buy it if Mr. Gudis wants to sell it to me at a reasonable price, but I got to have the dirt under it. So, but anyway, I don't see an abuse of discretion. I mean, if the standard becomes, okay, the HPC, in the exercise of its discretion, denies a permit, and then this council just says, well, you heard it, but we don't care what you heard, and we don't care what you decided, we're just going to make some other decision. That's not the review standard. We're violating our own ordinances if we do that. And your comment about people running in and out of it, it is the property owner's responsibility to secure the building so that that doesn't happen. I saw the same photos you saw, and it needs to be cleaned up. And if it's vacant, it needs to be secured so that people aren't going in and out of it. But the fact that the owner allows that to happen, in my view,
I wouldn't say they allow it.
does not justify tearing down a unique architectural house. I just don't see it.
I'm kind of in agreement with him. If they're letting them tear down the house right across from his, really don't see a reason why we shouldn't let this house be torn down. We voted to tear down the house right beside mine because it was in the same condition. Somebody's playing with it now, but if it was me, I would have tore the house down. It was cheaper to tear them houses down than to actually go in there and try to restore a house that's 100 years old.
That's not the standard. The standard.
But we don't really
is
worry about
not do
standards. That's just something to
whatever
say.
is the cheapest.
When I sit here and listen to this council ask how much rent gonna be, and this council had no problem voting for something a few months back that a one-bedroom was $1,500, a two-bedroom was $1,850. Not a single council member asked how much what they can charge. Now all of a sudden we want to know what people are charging. So we kind of pick and choose what we want to do for who we want to do it. That ain't my standard.
Please.
My standard is to do the same thing on a continuous basis. That's why I think we need to tear that house down just like we did before.
Can I ask?
Yes, sir.
From Mr. Probst, maybe, or someone, what was the HPC's rationale? What was their reason given for denial?
I can jump in on that, Logan.
Yeah,
if you
go
want.
ahead, Brad. I was trying to pull up the statement here.
So the reason the denial from HPC was provided was because removing the structure would impact the historic district itself, the status of the district. And this is in your code of ordinances for the rules of decisions they have to make whenever they're considering a demolition. This is your HPC rule. And secondly, there was a lack of plan. So proposing green space is not a contributing factor to the historic district. That is the removal of a structure that was contributing to the district in the first place. Just proposing it to call it green space is essentially not in compliance with your code of ordinances decisions for HPC when they are proposing a structure. And I'd like to speak to the comment about what occurred in the June meeting was that they did across the street approve the demolition, but the replacement of an identical structure that would be contributing to the district. So the comment about the structure that was granted to be demolished at the same time, the owner is proposing to rebuild an identical home to that historic character, structure, the look of the appearance and everything would be replaced on the property itself. And so that complies with the decision to grant demolition. If they're proposing a plan to grant a like structure contributing to the district. And I think thirdly, there was specific comments about the type of architecture that was for this area of the city. This is it the Madison Panel Road Historic District, was that this unique structure itself at the property in question had very unique and specific architecture to it, and that was also a reason that they had provided in their denial, which is also in your code of ordinances for their reason of making a decision on the denial.
And that denial letter is on page 147 in your packet that expressly lays that out.
Mr. Garrett, you mentioned about allowing the house just a couple doors down from you being torn down. The reason I was very much in favor of allowing that was because HPC did not do their jobs. Since then, they are all taking it very, very seriously, and they're actually doing work. You can't come in and say, oh, this is my favorite house, and then get to it and say, I'm sorry, I don't know what you're talking about. That's what they did last time. That's why the vote went that way. But in this particular case, they're doing the work, and we can't, overruling them just because we don't want it would be inappropriate, in my opinion.
Well, one thing we know, everybody get to make a vote.
Yeah, let me.
Something different.
I know we had, and I appreciate Mr. Dickinson's legal opinion on this. I would like to hear the legal opinion from the city attorney on what basis we have to overturn the HPC.
I mean, basically, Mr. Dickinson is a smarter and a more well-seasoned lawyer than me. But he's exactly.
Shot at your age, man.
He's exactly right. It is an abuse of discretion, so it is not de novo. Shorter answer, that is, you're not retrying the entire case here. You're looking at their decision and see, is there any manifest abuse of discretion? Was there some blatantly obvious fact that was missed? Was there some on its face, there's just no way they could have ended up or gotten that result? In the legal parlance world, abuse of discretion is sort of the highest standard on appeal. So if we go to what the layman knows as sort of standards of proof or burdens of proof in a civil versus a criminal case, in a civil case, usually it's a preponderance of the evidence, but in a criminal case, it's beyond all reasonable doubt a higher standard. When you go to the appellate court level and you are talking about different standards on appeal, the abuse of discretion is essentially the highest standard, meaning you're looking for some sort of just manifest abuse of discretion, some sort of manifest injustice. I can't quote you any specific case law generally. I can certainly go get you some if you'd like, but it's generally regarded as it is the highest standard on an appellate level. So his description is correct, is you're not to retry the case de novo. You are to look to see if the decision has any rational basis, any reasonable basis for that decision. And if there is, then generally the concept on appeal is to not disturb that decision absent a manifest abuse of discretion.
Even though I may agree with Mr. Gudis's premise on whether or not the house needs to be demolished, that's not what we're addressing.
Well, you're addressing.
What we're addressing is whether they made the decision within the rules that they operate under.
Essentially, yes. You are certainly addressing that issue. He's appealed their decision to deny his permit to demolish, but you are not the fact finder at this time. You are reviewing their decision from an appellate type perspective because they are the decision maker, fact finder in what we call a quasi judicial capacity, and now it's come up to you for appeal, and that standard is on appeal in quasi judicial decisions and abuse of discretion type review. So yes, you are addressing whether or not to allow it to be torn down, but the standard upon which you should look at it is that abuse of discretion standard as to the decision made by your Historic Preservation Commission. And I'm sorry, there's a lot of law you're talking that, but I hope I've answered it as best I can.
Thank you, Mr. Rosenthal. Any other comments from council? I'll entertain a motion.
Move to
Make a
deny
motion
the
to
appeal.
Have a motion to deny the appeal. Is there a second?
Second.
A motion by Mr. Dickinson and a second by Ms. Malcolm. Is there any discussion?
Yes, I'm gonna make a counter offer to the demolition of that house.
I'm sorry?
I want that house, we're gonna make a motion that house be demolition, that it can actually be torn down.
I've got a motion on the floor to deny it, and if that doesn't pass, we'll come back and redo the motion. So, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Can I ask to clarify? Well,
Okay, he wants to deny the
just deny the,
demolition, and he's wanting to.
It's a motion to deny the
This is a
appeal of the
motion to
appellant.
deny the appeal.
right, okay.
I'm just still,
That's your motion that's on the floor.
I'm not sure that, I have the information to be able to vote on that, on whether or not the HBC made the proper determination within what they need to go by. It just, maybe they did, and Mr. Dixon motion would be correct. I'm probably going to abstain from voting on this one because I'm just not clear on that.
Okay. All in favor signify by, as a matter of fact, all in favor, raise your hand, please. 1, 2, 3, 4. All opposed, like sign. 1, 2, 3, and 1 abstention. Motion carries for denial. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to do one more thing, and then I'm going to ask for a recess because I know that you want to discuss Plaza Drive. That's next. As soon as we get finished with that, I'll ask for a recess because there'll be a lot of folks who want to get out. There'll be some folks who need to go take a bathroom break. So let's get through this. Motion gave me a look, so. Now, to the conditional use of 533 Plaza Drive, I'll open the floor to council members only for discussion and/or action by the council on the conditional use of the property at 533 Plaza Drive to allow residential uses in the M1 zoning.
I'd like to make a motion
to approve.
No, let's just discuss first.
Let me start off. As I said a while ago, I have no problem with having folks live in industrial zoning if that's what they want to do. That's something you see a lot, particularly in Atlanta. My one concern with this thing, well, two concerns really. I was very concerned that this property got divided up without the permits being done. Now I understand that whoever owned it previously did that. So my remaining concern is the life safety. And as I was asking Mr. Ross, the city has an obligation to make sure that the property is safe. I'm in favor of granting the conditional use, but subject to those 4 conditions, and I think maybe a 5th one to just clarify that we need to have a complete inspection of it to make sure. I mean, the wiring's probably good, it's probably safe, but God forbid something happened, then folks are going to say, well, that council approved that thing, they should have known it wasn't going to be safe, somebody died in there. Nobody wants that. So that's my position on it. At the appropriate time, I'm ready to make a motion to grant it.
I think I got a motion coming from the other side, but let's just discussion right now.
All right.
And I don't know what our discretion is on this, so perhaps you could help. Again, my concern is that people are currently living there, right? They have a home. Well,
No.
they're not
Where
currently.
do you keep
they
getting that from?
previously-
He just told you that nobody lived there.
Did anybody ever live there?
They did,
Yeah, but
but
not
nobody
anymore.
lives there now.
But they're currently displaced because we have asked them to leave, right? And what we're talking about is whether or not these people can go back to their homes. Is that correct? So when I say people lived there, these are the people that I'm discussing. So to clarify. So my concern is that with the new program or whatever, to what extent are we able to review that or make sure that people have the ability to, I don't know, in a manner that's consistent with their well-being, be a part of this program or, anything like that?
So, Mr. Gregory, your intentions are wonderful and great, but at the end of the day, I don't think that this is our purview. Your purview is to make a decision as to whether or not it would be appropriate for multifamily use to exist as a conditional use in the existing M1 zoning. So,
I understand.
well-intentioned, but not something before y'all to address. You're either determining whether or not it's an appropriate use or not as a condition of our zoning ordinance. And then, of course, you can add conditions, but they need to be centered around sort of life safety, appropriateness of use, parking, aesthetics, those type of things, not sort of operational structure of.
Sure.
And as we add on, they will have to have 4 sewer taps. They'll have to have electric separated, and they'll have to and we will require water taps as well.
And I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Calendar. Do we have a limit on the number of people that can live in a two-bedroom unit that is approximately?
Oh, the occupancy will be based on the bedroom itself, so if
That's
it's, it'll, that number will be based on the number of bedrooms.
Okay. And we make sure that the applicant understands.
Right, so if a permit is granted to the property itself, that would be granted to the number of bedrooms that are going to be in the structure, and that's what the occupancy load would be based upon, is the number of bedrooms that are in the structure. So it would,
And now parking spaces.
I'm sorry?
And now parking spaces.
That's why the condition number 3 of parking spaces was put in there as well.
Okay. Mr. Garrett? Sorry to.
I'm just gonna second the
interrupting you.
motion, because I think we just getting out of,
Well, we got a motion coming from over there in a minute.
that's all I'm gonna do.
Mr. Bradley, you got anything? Ms. Crawford? Mr. Little?
I'm kind of like Mr. Dickinson. I think it's okay to be apartments. Mr. Tandron has said many times that he bought it this way. But I would think that a person buying what has obviously been used as a commercial building would make sure that the changes were permitted before he bought it. But he didn't. That's why I really don't have a problem if he is willing to go to the expense to totally reconfigure the downstairs to make it meet code and check all the settings.
Which he would have to do before he gets any CO. That's correct, Brad, right?
I'm sorry, I didn't,
So after he goes through this process, he still has to get official CO after making all the changes.
that proper permitting, based on the conditions that are proposed, if this council approves the request, he would have to go through permitting process like it was never done ever. And then he would have to go through and have those approvals done and have them complete in compliance with our building regulations.
Do we need to add to your conditions the separate taps and separate meters? Or is that just naturally?
It's going to be automatic, pretty much, because
Okay.
you're going to be
And
creating
in
4
order
units.
to meet code, you wouldn't have unused rooms with the door closed.
Right, and we had noted that in the report itself, was that, there could be some concern that if, depending on how it gets approved, that there's no guarantee in the future that that won't ever actually occur, even if we place a condition on the approval tonight that says that those walls are removed. There's nothing that says in the future those walls won't be replaced, and doors added, and closets added, and so forth. That's any structure in the city, really.
But in order to meet code, it appears from what we have here, there would almost have to be a total reconfiguration.
I would agree that on the downstairs apartments, for sure, that's, because there's a retaining wall I'm going to back up to help answer this question a little bit. So I think there were some comments earlier about this isn't a wall, this is a concrete wall that is below this spot in the parking lot. So these bedrooms abut a concrete wall. There is no creation of a window for those rooms.
No, but it could involve turning the whole floor plan around.
I would agree with that 100%. Is that there could be a potential redevelopment of that floor entirely to meet our ordinance. That I certainly agree with.
And how would we condition that?
I think that if we
in the four
stick
conditions.
with this first condition, I agree with Councilman Dickinson. This is very vague, but it's vague on purpose, was that if it's granted approval, you're looking at a clean slate, the requirement to go through buildings, submit building plans to the building department. They go through the inspections, they get the approvals, we give them a CO, just like if it were never built.
Yeah, okay.
And that's what that statement was written for in that manner.
Any other, not yet?
Not yet.
Any other questions or comments?
I just want to say that my fear is that if this is approved, and I understand and I have utmost respect for what has been done in the sense of trying to help these people that could not get their utilities turned on because of their credit rating and all that. But I'm fearful that this is going to create a domino effect with more illegal uses in our city. And I think we need to consider that. That's all I'm gonna say.
In
Are
response
you talking
to
about
that,
more than 1 meter separate? Is that the main thing you're talking about?
Right, and just the fact that we'll have people going in M1 zoning and creating apartments and with 1 meter and charging utilities based on square feet and.
I mean, I agree with.
I'm fearful of that.
Well-
I
And
agree
I'm
with
not saying that we don't need more apartments for people with the ability to graduate their
lip service.
rents based on income, but, you know, I don't want to make a move that's going to create that domino
I think
effect for
separating
illegal
the
uses.
utility services would be part of the code requirement.
That is.
Oh, yeah,
I
it
believe
will
what she's
be.
saying, is she just wants to make sure it's done properly, which I also agree with.
well,
And that,
and Ms. Malcolm, I think it comes down to this. I think that this is a lesson to this owner and to anybody else who does something like this. It's almost always cheaper to do it the right way first rather than do something and then find out you got to redo it and it costs twice as much to redo it as it would have cost to do it right. So I don't think there's a real danger that there's going to be a rush of people to try to do this thing. So at the appropriate time,
No,
Mr. Mayor,
no, you're not ready?
I'm ready.
I'm taking Mr. Boyce.
Okay.
I made a motion 5 minutes ago. I didn't want to second it.
I will second it
Thank you.
with the conditions.
With the conditions, thank you.
I have a motion and a second by Mr. Boyce and Mr. Dickinson to approve the conditional use at 533 Plaza Drive. Based upon the conditions, as Mr. Callender said, and the development regs, which include all tap fees and sewer fees and so on and so forth. Is there any further discussion?
I just have one, you know me, I'm gonna have one more.
Yes, ma'am?
On 1,245 square foot apartment, does code allow, how many ingress and egress destinations do you have to have?
I'm not a building official in that regard. I have no idea.
But we will be assured that we have the correct ingress and egress.
That will be part of, if you approve this, number one is going to guarantee that those items have been met.
Yeah, code staff will review all that for proper.
Yeah, condition number one, just real quick, condition number one is sort of getting into all of these sort of life safety code issues that you're talking about. Do they have to split up the utilities? Do they not? Do they have to, have extra egresses? Those are the very technical code issues that your code office, particularly Mr. Kelly and his staff, can address. Generally, the answer is a primary and a secondary, and usually the secondary is your windows. Okay, so every bedroom has got to have secondary egress in addition to the primary egress. So the short answer is one front door and windows at every bedroom. But there can be exceptions to that and details to that and so on and so forth. So we can't speak for Mr. Kelly. That's why condition number one is very broad-based to make sure that they've got to comply with all the life safety codes, all the various building codes. This is not, just to clarify for the record, because I know Chuck and I haven't talked about this, but this is not a pre-existing non-conforming use because it wasn't an appropriate use, right? So whoever the former owner is brought this thing online, I guess it sounds like, has some apartments without an appropriate conditional use. So he's got to come up to snuff on all these different code issues because these are initial applications for this building to build this out as an apartment building under this newly approved conditional use if y'all choose to so grant it.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. That passes. Thank you, folks, for coming in. 1 second. 1 second, please. 1 second, please. Before you all get up in the mass exodus, I need a motion for a little break.
Motion to take a break.
Second.
Motion second. All in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Take a break. I just like hitting that.
You're the all-star, you know?
Are we having fun, Tyler?
I am.
Because it ain't your bedtime.
That's right.
Anybody see Norman or Chaz out there? Chief? Yes. Can you poke your head out and see if Mr. Boyce and Mr. Garrett are available? Other chief?
I heard you just jump.
Somebody's going home.
We got a quorum?
Yes.
Who was the gentleman that spoke about that?
Trying to be serious. Yeah, I'm trying to look at this.
Yeah.
He's got beer or something, or, well,
Thought Dykes was just gonna poke his head out. Thought Dykes was just gonna poke his head out.
Michael the beer, I think is what he's. One for me. But he was saying something.
All right, here we go, everybody. Rezone at 408 Knight Street. I'll open the floor to council members only for discussion and/or action. I kind of think I know where we're going on this, but is there any comments, questions about Knight Street?
I make a motion to approve.
A motion to approve by Ms. Malcolm. Is there a second?
Second.
And a second by Mr. Gregory. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries, that passes. Moving to the preliminary plat of the Overlook at Monroe. Mr. Calendar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a request for a preliminary plat approval. This is for 7 townhomes on South Madison, near the corner of Davis Street, and it also fronts on Millage Avenue. This is a renewal of a preliminary plat that was previously approved by the city council, and they're asking tonight to get that reapproval of the preliminary plat so they can get their LDP and get the project moving forward again. The recommendation is approval as submitted without any corrections.
Thank you, sir. Are there any questions for Brad? I think this is a slam dunk, too. I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Motion to approve by Mr. Dickinson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Little. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries, that passes. Moving to preliminary plat, I-4 Development Phase 2, Mr. Calendar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a proposal for technically a second phase of a project. Just north of the site that's before you were some lots that were subdivided where the Waffle House and Post Office area is right now off Saratoga. This is a proposed subdivision for 6 commercial lots, comprises approximately 17.758 acres on the northwest corner of Charlotte Ryle Boulevard and State Route 11. It also includes frontages on Double Springs Church Road and Double Springs Church Road connector. And as you can see in the plat, there are a total of 6 lots. There will be a new road dedicated between the largest lot west of the site and then some lots accessed off of a realignment of Double Springs Road to Saratoga Drive. The recommendation is approval approval as submitted without any corrections.
Any questions for Brad? I think I might know this one, too. Can I have a motion, please?
Move to approve.
Motion to approve by Ms. Malcolm. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Gregory. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries, that passes. Moving to the appointment of the Downtown Development Authority and Convention and Visitors Bureau Authority and Urban Redevelopment Agency. I need a motion to appoint Ms. Brittany Palazzo to fill the unexpired term of Ross Bradley to expire on December 31st, 2024.
Move to approve.
I have a motion to approve by Mr. Gregory. Is there a second?
Second.
A second by Ms. Malcolm. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Leanne, just yell at Brittany for us, please. Moving to the approval of the zoning ordinance code text amendment number 16. Are there any questions for this ordinance?
And Mr. Mayor, I have a couple technical things before a motion is taken, but if there's any discussion first.
I think, go ahead.
Okay. So this is in response to House Bill 1405, so it's really just some procedural cleanup, but House Bill 1405 went into effect on July 1, so here we are on July 17. So your ordinance allows you to waive second reading. We are asking you to do that so that this ordinance can go into effect tonight. So you would actually need two motions, a motion to waive second reading that must pass by a 3/4 or better majority, and then a motion to approve and adopt the ordinance to go into effect. That gets us in compliance with House Bill 1405 essentially as soon as we could.
Okay. Could I have a motion to forego reading the first reading?
So moved.
A motion by Mr. Dickinson. Is there a second?
Second.
A second by Ms. Malcolm. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries, that passes. Now, I need a motion to forego the second reading, please.
No. You waived second reading. This is your first reading, and you're ready to take a motion to adopt it now.
All right. So we don't want the first reading anyway. Thank you. I'll entertain a motion, please.
Move to adopt.
Motion to adopt by Mr. Dickinson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Malcolm. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries, that passes. Moving to district items, Ms. Malcolm.
We still got discussion, right, of the alcohol ordinance?
So we move that to next week.
I thought you wanted to move it.
The motion was to change it from a first reading to discussion on the alcohol beverage ordinance amendment.
To make it discussion.
Okay.
Yeah, I think my intent was to ask for an explanation to go through with discussion there. Is if we could go through the points that are being changed or deleted or added.
Would you like me to handle that, Mayor?
Please, sir.
Sure. So if you look at your ordinance, I'll be happy to do this. The ordinance changes come from a couple of different bases. One is this ordinance is about 5 years old, so we went through and there's some specific cleanup to address some specific confusion or some misinterpretation of some areas. The other purpose of the ordinance is to strengthen some enforcement elements. One of the purposes is to change the serving hours, and I'll get into that in a minute, and then just a few other particulars, and I'll be happy to address them as we go through. But I can go through in order. In the first section, in section 6.1, there's a definition change of microbreweries and microdistilleries. That confusion centered around a difference between local law and the state law. So what we did is we reorganized that definition to essentially mirror the state law. So from an enforcement and use perspective, there wouldn't be any confusion in the future. Basically, folks will look back to what the state law does in defining how a microbrewery and microdistilleries can sell alcohol for consumption on premises or takeaway, what we call takeaway package sales from the premises. We added a definition of a wine shop because there was discussion about a desire to add a wine shop or basically a wine tasting type location, and then there's regulations later on in the in the ordinance to address those.
I'm sorry, Mr. Ronnie, can we go by each one of them if I ask a question?
I'm sorry?
On the one on their definition changes, is the amount that they do the main change of the definition? The first one says you can only do like 500, and then it says, no, you can do 10,000 barrels?
No, so the issue is, the issue is we changed the ordinance to be able to address, and we don't have any micro distilleries, I don't think, in the city right now, but on microbreweries and micro distilleries both, we changed the ordinance to reflect back or look back at the limitations of on-premise or consumption sales or on-premise package sales to follow the metrics of Georgia law. So you can, within your ordinance, limit how much is actually produced, and you do. There's a definition description between a microbrewery and a brewery, a microdistillery and a distillery. But the specific issue that was a cleanup, because there was some confusion, is the difference of exactly how the ordinance is interpreted as it relates to the maximums for the sale of on-premise consumption barrels or off-premise takeaway retail sales of either breweries or distilleries.
Okay, I mean, when I was going through, I saw it, the thing on the micro distillery, which I don't guess we have any of them, but the old one said they can only manufacture up to 500 barrels per year for wholesale distribution, and the new wording says they can do 10,000 barrels a year. So it's a big jump from 500 to 10,000. Is that just because state law was different?
No, that specific issue, we don't have any distilleries or micro distilleries in the city. I think we only have a microbrewery at this point. That distinction comes back to the definition of distillery, because when we looked up the definition of distillery, a distillery is defined as a location that manufactures 10,000 or more barrels. Okay. So if we didn't match it up to that number, then the theory would be that we could have somebody caught in the middle. They could only manufacture up to 500, and then they couldn't exist in the city of Monroe from 501 to 9,999. And in particular, the state ordinance on the local, on the on-premise consumption for microdistilleries was a much larger number than 500 barrels, meaning the whole idea is that these small breweries and small distilleries have the ability to produce alcohol. And when they produce it, there's an expectation that some of it they will sell on-premise for consumption, or some of it they will sell on-premise for what we call takeaway retail sales. But the balance of it will be used for wholesale distribution sales. In fact, usually it's considered the majority of it. So I remember the one in my head for microbrewery. I can't remember the one for
yeah, and I'm sure we'll get to that later. That's the part I had questions on why we were changing something from 500 barrels to 10,000 barrels. I think you just answered it. So
yes, so that we can match up with the Georgia law.
Right. That's the kind of explanations I was hoping we'd be able to get to understand.
Okay. All right, the next definition addition is the definition of a wine shop. Basically, in discussions with staff and discussions with DDA, there's a desire for the implementation of wine shops, so we added that definition, and then we added some regulation to it later on in the section changes to limit where those can be located and limit the type of facilities where they can be, type of other auxiliary or ancillary services where they can be located. Then in section 611, we changed some fees to comport with and come in more aligned with sort of what staff was seeing with uses and permits. And then we added the fee structure for special event facility, because one of the changes you'll see later on is that we added the right for special events facilities to get both beer and wine and distilled spirits consumption by the premises licenses. So we matched those license fees to be commensurate or the same as what restaurants will have, as well as nonprofits.
Was there a reason why we eliminated the maximum days per year on temporary license?
Yes, because it's addressed later, so there's a change to that, but it's addressed later, and so to stay consistent in the code, we deleted the maximums in the fee section and just left it in where it applies in the code section later. And we took.
There is still a maximum.
Yes, it went.
Came out of this section.
Correct. It went from 10 to the change that's involved in this went from 10 to 20. That change specifically came from DDA requests and staff discussions on the city events, and basically the idea is that if there were more than 10 city events where there'd be a desire for there to be alcohol vendors, then the code itself would prohibit alcohol from being available at all of the city events that folks want to come buy these temporary licenses for.
Okay, and then on the nonprofit private clubs.
Yes.
Currently, it's a $600 fee license, and we're proposing that go to 1,000?
Yes, and the discussion with staff there is so that all of the licenses for on-premise consumption would be in line with one another. So all restaurants, all private clubs, all special events facilities, we took them to a standardized common fee, 1,000 for beer and wine, 3,000 for liquor.
Okay.
And added a wine shop provision as well. Under Section 617, suspension or revocation license, we added a subsection J. The whole purpose of that is to give the code enforcement officer and the mayor and council a little bit of extra teeth in our efforts if we have some sort of, so part of these discussions, right, we're improving our enforcement abilities. If we have some sort of unscrupulous license holder, Section J is sort of a bigger catch-all that would allow code office and this body to come in and address issues of revocation of licenses for folks that aren't using their license in the inappropriate ways that are detrimental to the health, safety, and welfare of the general citizens and businesses of Monroe. So we added that Section J for that purpose. For Section 634, there was discussion about deletion of the if patron has purchased a meal. That came up after discussions, I believe, with restaurant owners in the downtown area, in that folks who come in and have a drink, and if they want to buy a bottle of wine, and this is what we call cork and bagging it, to take home, they should be able to cork and bag it, and they don't just have to buy a meal. That's Section 630.
So does that mean that if I just go into a restaurant and say I want to buy a bottle of wine, I can do that? I don't have to do anything else, correct?
No, that's not entirely accurate. If you go into a restaurant that has retail package sales license as well, which the row is one, and I don't believe there's another, then you could buy an unopened bottle of wine to take off premises. But if you go into a restaurant and you want to buy a bottle of wine, it'll have to be corked. You'll have to receive at least some pour of that drink. Then at that point, if you wanted to take the unused bottle of wine pursuant to Section 634D, which is what we call the bag and cork provisions, then you could have that bottle of wine bagged, corked by staff, and there's regulations as to how they're supposed to staple the receipt to the top to ensure that the bottle and the bag is not opened while in transit back to their residence.
Okay, so in 634D, the part that we're taking out about the purchasing a meal and stuff, can you explain why that particular section is coming out?
Yes, for what I just said at the beginning, and that is this, is that there's discussion among restaurant owners that if someone wanted to come into the restaurant, purchase a nice bottle of wine, have eyeglass, and then take the bottle home, there were people who wanted to do that weren't having a whole meal. They were just having a glass of wine, say at cocktail hour, if you will, and they want to take the bottle home after it's been bagged and corked by staff.
So they can have a portion of the bottle, have to drink a portion of the bottle in the restaurant, and then they can cork the rest of it?
Correct.
Okay. Because I didn't, maybe that's later on, I didn't see that part, because this takes out the part here, consumed a portion of the bottle.
No, it does not, because it says, for consumption on the premises may permit a patron to remove one unsealed bottle of wine per patron for consumption off premises. A partially consumed bottle of wine that is to be removed and corked from the premises must be securely corked and resealed. So if it's been consumed, it has to be recorked. Bottled and bagged and corked is what they call it in the industry before it can be taken off premises.
Okay, that was a little confusing to me.
All right, so section.
Let me ask you this. So if I go to the row and I want to take my bottle of wine that's unfinished out, can I go sit in the park and open it and drink it?
Well, no, because we are trying to add an ordinance that addresses the issue of open container. Prior to this ordinance getting passed, which we've now got pushed off to next month and the next, we've added an open container regulation that gives law enforcement additional resources to address. So as we get later into all of the ordinances that we've changed, the drinking of alcohol on public property, save the Monroe Historic Entertainment District, under this new ordinance would be prohibited. But currently it is technically not, although there's state law that I think probably could address some open container provisions. So 636, Monroe Historic Entertainment District, the change there was twofold. One is to address that there would be an approved logo, and after much discussion on this, the idea was to leave that logo approval because it may need to change over time with the approval being vested with the city administrator, and to delete the requirement of a name on the cup, and also to change the cup from 20 ounces to 16 ounces. So those are your two changes in 636. There is no change to the boundaries of the Monroe Historic Downtown Entertainment District. There were numerous discussions about expanding the downtown Monroe Historic Entertainment District, and that may be something that y'all want to address in the future, but there was no general consensus between DDA, staff, and what sounded like this corporate body to expand it at this time. There were discussions about creating some ped sheds that we talked about, pocket parks where other areas of the town could be what we call Stumble Cup walkable. But the idea was we're about to go through a whole entire code rewrite. And so those ped sheds or those areas that may be appropriate to add those to would be something that could be addressed there. Then we could come back and staff could get those recommendations for you and come back and bring those up to you in the future. So that was sort of twofold. One is DDA wanted to expand the sort of downtown core one, and then Mr. Garrett's suggestion was what about other areas that can have the Stumble Cup provisions? And just the short answer is, staff felt, and Mr. Probst can chime in if he wants to, that we just didn't have enough data, we didn't have enough quantifiable information about where would those be appropriate. So let's get the new code in place with the code process that's coming online, and then after that occurs, then you could come back and look at how you could best address those.
So do both mills, one on Madison as well as one on Broad, are they included in the entertainment district?
No, they're not, but they're currently private property. So if they wanted to stay within the confines of their private property, right, they're available to do so. There's just no transit between downtown and here with a cup.
So if you're saying if it's private property, then what?
So they have special events there, special event venues, each mill.
Yeah, but what about like the 2412 that's on out a little further?
That would be the ped shed.
So that's what we're talking about in the future. I think it would be, we need to give it more thought than trying to cram it into one big alcohol ordinance. Where do we want these little nodes of entertainment activity to be throughout the city? Not everything has to be in downtown specifically. There could be other areas that link to downtown along the way, if that makes sense.
And going specifically to the point of the other mill, the new mill is the Broad Street Mill. It does touch on the entertainment district, so really the mill itself is on private property, but the whole concept of a Stumble Cup is for the property to be brought onto the public right-of-ways. So as I'm looking at the site right now, let me make sure I'm right. Yeah, there's nothing to prevent the occupants of the Walton Mill from walking out that front entrance and walking down South Broad Street with the Stumble Cups.
So that is part of the entertainment district.
Well, it's technically, the property is not part of the entertainment district, but it touches on the entertainment district, so it gives the effective result. Folks couldn't walk out the back side of the Walton Mill onto Barrett Street. They couldn't walk out the south side of the mill on 2nd Street. But if they walked out the front entrance of the Walton Mill and only took a left or only proceeded straight across on Meir Street, but did not take a right heading south on South Broad, then yes, they could partake of the benefits of the Monroe Historic Downtown Entertainment District and the use of Stumble Cups.
And the same thing is true on South Madison in front of the engine room, for example?
Technically, no. You could make an argument that you could make a beeline. Well, you could, you could walk on my sidewalks on Monroe Cotton Mills, and then right at the very last corner, jump onto the sidewalk in front of 533 South Madison, and then it looks like you would be compliant. But the idea was discussed, do we add more of the mill districts into the entertainment district? Do we add ped sheds into the entertainment district? And the answer was we just didn't have enough data to do it yet. Let's do it when we have better information. Those are the changes to Section 636.
Okay.
Section 637, the only change is to change temporary license maximum from 10 to 20. And that came as a result of discussions, I believe, with DDA and some of the users of those temporary licenses. Section 681 along with section 6106, so they're kind of separated, but I want to deal with those together. That was to clean up exactly where alcohol sales are permitted. Section 681 relates to liquor by the drink for on-site consumption. Section 606 relates to beer and wine by the drink for on-site consumption. We cleaned up those sections to make sure that there was no discrepancy and dispute as to where you could or couldn't have an on-premise consumption license, and we added the addition of special events facilities due to the request from the Walton Mill owners, Mr. Holder. And just as an aside, I do own a special events facility. I am not buying one of these permits because I don't want to have to do anything to do with the buying and selling of alcohol, not because I don't drink it, but because it's very time-consuming and a lot of regulation. So I'm not going to have one for the engine room, but I understand why other special events facilities would want to have it. Section 684 and Section 6108 are mirrored sections, one for beer and wine and one for distilled spirits and one for beer and wine. This is the section that the gentleman who commented on earlier was addressing. So first, there's a little bit of cleanup in this section to make it read a little bit better, but the primary change of this section was to change the cutoff for last call. Just to be clear, this is not a prohibition on how late restaurants can be open. This is a prohibition on how late restaurants can serve alcoholic beverages by the drink. Our current ordinance goes to 1:55 a.m. This pulls it back to 12:30 a.m. to address the questions or concerns that were raised about safety concerns and those sort of things. So the singular change, other than cleaning it up, that is operative, that matters, is we changed the cutoff time for last call from 1:55 a.m. and pulled it back to 12:30 a.m., with the singular exception of that being New Year's Eve and New Year's Day, that could go to 1:30 a.m.
Let me ask you a question, because that's why the majority of them guys were actually here about that cutoff time.
Correct, and I just wanted to clarify.
I talked to a few of them, so, I mean, we pushed it back, but a lot of them guys here was here specifically for that concern, that they want that to stay to 1:55 and not 12:30.
I understand, and that's for y'all's purview to decide what you want to do. But basically, just to clarify on his comments, it is not a prohibition on the restaurant being opened. It is a prohibition on when last call, last drinks can be served.
Yeah, but if you can't serve drinks, it might well be closed.
Again,
So
that's
when
within
we were
your
writing
purview.
this, though, staff was getting a lot of input that we needed to draw all that back, right? So we, instead of,
Did y'all get input from them people that were here tonight?
now I'm talking about city council input, Now, I'm not
No,
saying,
I always say they need to stay on.
I'm not saying this can't change, but when we were drafting this, that's why it's put at 12:30 a.m., Monday through Saturday.
And if y'all want a different number, you simply tell us. What it has been is 1:55 a.m. And the compromise, because there was some discussion about making last call at either 11:30 or midnight, and so I think that's where 12:30 came from.
I know that the guys that I talked to tonight wanted to stay at 1:45. I don't know what time their restaurant closed, but that's what they were actually here specific about, keeping it to 1:45 and not moving it back to 12:30.
So that's section 6184 and section 6108. They're mirrored sections. One deals with distilled spirits, one deals with beer and wine. And the operative change is changing it from 1:55 a.m. to 12:30. If the mayor and council have a desire to vote on an ordinance change that does a different time, you certainly tell us, and it's just the change of a word processing button.
Paul, can you, down below the hours, the part that's being deleted
Yes,
in 684,
yes.
starting with any licensed establishment derives at least 50%, what's the thing about all that being deleted?
It's cleaning it up because all of those regulatory regimes of they have to have the number of alcohol, percentage of alcohol sales or stadiums and coliseums, it's addressed in other sections, so it was really just duplicative. So this is a true ordinance cleanup. It's to get the sections of the ordinance that say hours of sales to focus on hours of sales, and the sections of ordinance that say, regulation of stadiums and coliseums to focus on that.
So I got, and I understand what you're saying now about cleanup, but it got confusing to me when I was trying to read it of understanding. What are the rules as far as food is concerned?
In what way? I mean, you say when food is concerned.
Finish.
Okay.
I think that somewhere in here, And some of that's been stricken and some of that's been changed in this latest, and that's the reason I was confused on it. But at some point, we had a thing that said you can't serve alcohol unless you also serve food, and it has, food sales have to be a certain portion of your total amount in order to sell alcohol.
That was a provision that pre-existed the 2018 amendment.
Because
That
some
changed.
brewery could not operate if that were the case.
Well,
If you provide.
that's a little bit different. That's a little bit different.
Yeah, that's
Please
not,
help me understand.
but that's a microbrewery, so.
Because it's a microbrewery.
It's a microbrewery, so it's different.
But, so to answer your question, a restaurant has certain restaurant requirements, and that's contained in the definitions of an eating establishment.
That's in 612.
6.1 is the definition of an eating establishment. Then there's additional sections that we have not changed, that I'd have to go and pull, that do get into some percentages. But the general percentage concept that you're thinking of, and I'm going to have to pull these because these are sections that are not being edited. These are sections that already exist. I'm going to have to pull those because
6110-2, on premises consumption licensees shall maintain at least 60% of their
Yeah, there you go.
volume from
60%.
sale. Yeah.
I'm sorry, what did it say, Logan?
60% of their business volume from the sale of other merchandise or services, not including alcoholic beverage.
Okay. So if a person just wanted to open a bar, they can't do that.
bars are not permitted in Monroe.
I mean, that's because of that rule, right? I mean, that's what prevents a bar from opening?
Well, what prevents a bar from opening, because that percentage, what prevents a bar from opening is the bars are not a permitted location for consumption of alcohol. Eating establishments are, which then have to have all the eating establishment requirements. But then then there are percentage limitations as well. Give me a second.
Okay, so.
But, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So, to serve alcohol by the drink, whether it's beer, wine, or distilled, either one, in the city of Monroe, you either have to be in a microbrewery or in an eating establishment, is that correct?
No, that's not correct.
Or a special events facility?
No, that's also not correct. Hang on and I'll tell you. And there's two different provisions and lists.
And I'm not trying to jump around, it was just because this stuff gets lined out, it gets confusing.
Okay, so let me point you to the last two sections that we went over, and that is section 681 and section 6106. Those are the locations, section 681 for liquor by the drink and section 6106 for beer and wine by the drink. Those are the locations in which liquor by the drink and alcohol, beer and wine by the drink are permitted. Eating establishments, indoor commercial recreation facilities, indoor publicly owned civic and cultural centers deriving at least 70% of their total gross revenue from operational activities, public and privately owned golf courses, public stadiums, business establishments holding an amenities license pursuant to section 6111, business establishments holding premises consumption license pursuant to section 6110, private clubs, in-room service for hotels and motels, and in special events facilities.
Okay, and what is an indoor commercial recreation establishment?
A bowling alley is the simplest example I could give you. We don't have any of those in Monroe.
Okay. And where does the wine truck, or whatever that's called, that serves beer?
That's in section 6106, sub 11, at wine shops, top of that following page.
So a truck is a wine shop?
No. No, that relates to temporary licenses. So if you're talking about the wine truck that I think has been around town,
Yeah.
that's where they're getting temporary licenses under the temporary license provisions.
So temporary license don't have to be in one of these places you just described?
No, temporary licenses have to comply with the temporary license regulations and provisions contained within Chapter 6 of your alcohol ordinance.
The locations where permitted does not include temporary license. They could be permitted other than these locations.
That's correct.
Okay.
For the issuance of a annual license. Because see, it's where can you issue a license? These are the locations where you can issue an ongoing annual license. Those are licenses under your temporary permitting or temporary license structure, which there is an analogous temporary license structure under state law that they have to comply with as well. So that is temporary licenses. This is about your permanent licenses. To come back to your percentages, and thank you, Logan, for pointing out, and thank you, Ms. Malcolm, for remembering, because it's been 5 years. In 2018, when we edited the alcohol ordinance and did its first significant rewrite in over 20 years, we removed the percentage sales requirement as it relates to a percentage of beer and wine versus food. However, the percentage stayed in as it relates to liquor versus food. So liquor license, you must have 60% or more of your business volume from food sales or non-liquor sales, but beer and wine, there was no percentage. But if you're going to serve beer and wine at a food eating establishment, you still must meet all the other kitchen requirements. Food must be available all hours, et cetera, et cetera. I'll keep moving unless anybody has any other questions. So we handled 681, 684, 6106, and 6108. That handles hours of sale as well as locations. 6110 is for what we call the special sales volume ratio for select businesses. That's for the downtown entertainment district businesses, to where the alcoholic beverages is clearly incidental. We made 2 changes there. We cleaned up a typographical error, and then we removed the provision for alcohol sales on Sunday. I think that came from some of the small I think there's 2 in town where they are open as a dress shop, and they can also buy a glass of wine while they're going through the dress shop, and they had people wanting to buy a glass of wine on Sunday. So that was the basis of that change. Section 6112 is the addition of a wine shop definition and regulations relating to it. Essentially, the idea is a beer and wine package sales store could also sell wine or beer by the glass for consumption on the premise with some additional regulations. They have to be in the Monroe Historic Downtown Entertainment District, and they cannot be at a location that also sells fuel, lottery tickets, or tobacco products. So essentially, it is a true beer and wine shop where they can sell their wine. We stole this ordinance, I believe, from Lilburn. Many jurisdictions have passed a wine shop ordinance in the last few years, and so imitation is usually the highest form of flattery, and I think it came from Lilburn, if I'm not mistaken. Section 6352 is just a cleanup to some information relating to special events facilities. And then Chapter 62 additions, this is for Chief Watts. This gives the city police department a little bit better strength on public intox and on open container. Essentially, we've added a public intox city ordinance provision so that folks that are found intoxicated can be charged if they meet the definitions of violating that city ordinance. And we specifically prohibited open containers anywhere in the city that is not in the Monroe Historic Entertainment District. Those are the edits that we've made to the alcohol ordinance, and I'll be happy to answer any questions if anyone has any further.
Are there any questions for Mr. Rosenthal?
Yeah, on the open container part, can you just clarify the semi-public parking facility, Greg?
Basically, semi-public parking facility essentially envisions tailgating. That is a standard provision that's put in to prevent tailgating, if you will. So basically a public parking lot, meaning where you can go and you can pay to publicly park, or one of our parking lots, not somebody's driveway, but if there's a place where you could go park in downtown, then open containers not permitted there unless it's within the entertainment district.
There's a definition of growler in there, and I think it says glass container. I think growlers can be aluminum or metal or plastic.
Is there a reason for glass?
You
can
do
see
need
through
to
it?
change that, because you really don't want glass ones. You really want the metal ones.
Well, that was my one.
Trust me on that.
All right, we'll take care of that.
So partly based on something Mr. Garrett said earlier and the guy that spoke, and as I look at this, that I think there's a lot of work's gone into this, obviously. I lot of changes in it, and many of which affect current license holders. And I just wondered if, before we put those kind of changes into effect, should those existing license holders be notified of what's going on?
I mean, I think they've been notified.
Yeah, this,
I mean, there's
why they were
two,
here.
there's two that this affects, or possibly three of all our restaurants. Bemidji's closes at 10 o'clock.
I'm not talking about just the hours, but the rates going up and.
Oh.
And I think some of the DDA people have been involved in all this, and so some of those guys are gonna be knowledgeable that we're doing something. But I'm not sure about other people, and I just don't know whether it's,
How do you, I
When you
mean,
go up on
basically,
licensing
how do
fees.
you, I mean, you tell them licensing fees are gonna increase, but you can't explain all of this.
For some it is, for others it's not. And what we're trying to do is create parity across the board for everybody. Whether it be private clubs or,
Right.
a restaurant or somewhere in between.
Everybody pays the same.
We could put that out to all license holders that said, these are the new licensing guidelines and fees.
Yeah, yeah.
They're gonna come out and have this discussion next month, though, right?
Yeah. We have,
I think you stopped a lot of them from actually talking at night.
Yeah.
Well, they wouldn't have been allowed to talk other than public comment.
But the one thing that
Is it gonna be on the agenda next month?
first reading, but one thing that we'll probably have some more discussion on is just the hours. That's, to me, that's probably the one thing that anybody's gonna have issue with.
Yeah, that's all they're here.
And frankly, I was in nothing good happens after midnight, but the more I think about it, could you last call at 12:30 or 12:45 or?
Well, last call, that's what we've got in here. Last call at 12:30, and then, isn't that right? Is that what it?
it says 12:30 right now.
Yeah, last call at 12:30. They're not gonna be gone till 1 or 1:30. It doesn't tell them they have to shut down at 12:30, because everybody's gotta drink that drink, and people are probably gonna buy 3. So they can stay till whenever they close. I mean, come on, y'all, get real. We know that's the truth.
I just know that's
So,
what
I
they were
mean,
coming out here to
nothing,
talk
you
about.
know, it's.
Making
it's
sure it extended past
preserving
12:30. I
the
talked to a
integrity of
couple
our
of the guys.
community.
That was their concern about that, shutting it down at 12:30. Cause they caught me outside and actually put that bug in my ear. So
Well,
the
just-
majority of them actually come to talk about that.
Just to be clear, just a couple things, just make sure everybody's clear on the same discussion. It is a change of last call from 1:55 a.m. to 12:30, so it's an hour and 25-minute difference in the serving times. And it is not a shutdown. It is a shutdown of service of alcoholic beverages, but it's not a shutdown prohibition of how late they can stay open. If y'all want it to be 1:55, tell us. If you want it to be 4 a.m., tell us. It's whatever y'all want. The last time we were dealing with this several months ago, and we've had lots of discussion on this, the general consensus from this council was to shorten the service time, to cut it off sooner. And so that's what we did. If y'all want to move it a different spot or leave it like it is, y'all need to let us know and be happy to have it ready for you.
I was kind of surprised it was 2 until they told me.
Paul, one clarification. You noted, going through this, that food must be served when alcohol is available. So the kitchen shall remain open, or some food
Yes.
product?
If it's a restaurant, that's correct. So an eating establishment will be prepared to serve food every hour that they are open. That's in your definitions.
Okay, so we have a lot to discuss about hours. Did you have any more questions, Mr. Bradley? And then we'll do first reading next month. Do we want to plan on a discussion for hours before we do first reading? Or can we just?
I'm here every day.
Yeah, if we can just get a general consensus on that before we publish the agenda, we can make the final changes.
Okay.
I mean, do we have any thoughts right now? Can we knock it out? I mean, either we're doing it or we're not, right? I mean,
It's your discussion.
Well, we've modified the agenda to be no action, so let's just do discussion only. If y'all have a general consensus, I'd love to hear it, and I can go ahead and modify, the documents now, but
We're
we're not taking any official action on it.
right, but we're not going to email back and forth about it. Well, I think 11.
there's nothing wrong with that.
You can, that's totally legal, but,
I mean, I'm just asking, does somebody, do you want for it to be 2 a.m. or?
I'm just saying what they want. I don't drink, so it don't make me no different. But the guys I talked to, and it was a lot of them here that was actually saying the same things, which you probably know that though. That they want to stay to 155. So I would be more inclined to leave it at 155.
And I'll be more inclined to bring it back to 12:30.
It's your prerogative.
That's, everybody has their opinion, and I think it's just a matter of preserving the integrity of our community, and I don't believe that
Please.
at the end of the day, it's going to deter restaurants from, and David's a restaurant owner. Do you think it's going to deter?
I'm also a mattress owner, but hey. No, we don't. All right, I'll just tell you what I'm hearing from customers, okay? I go to bed early. In fact, we're already past my bedtime. But what I hear from my customers is there is a late night crowd that comes in, fairly late, sometime around 11:30, midnight, something like that. Those folks really don't want to change. My personal perspective is I really don't care, but I think maybe 1 would be more reasonable than 12:30 if it's last call, because, and I don't know what the other places are doing, but in ours, we are very strict about that cutoff, and the bartenders kind of tell people, and hang around for a while after you've had that drink, make sure you're okay and those kinds of things. So, and if they get the last drink at 1 o'clock, they're probably going to be there until around 2. But my staff people want to get out of there at some point as well. So, now, again, a little bit of difference between is it a Wednesday night or is it a Saturday night kind of thing. People stay out later, I think, on Fridays and Saturdays. So, and I want to hear from some of these other business people in the public forum what they think. So, but I would be in favor of 1 rather than 12:30.
I was just gonna ask RV if there's, from a public safety perspective, have you had to deal with anything on that front? Do you have an opinion on that?
Opinion on,
As far as the closing time being earlier or later?
I mean, professionally, whatever the council approves, that's what we'll enforce. And I'll just say this, time will tell whether it was a good move or it wasn't. And we'll be able to, everything that we do on the law enforcement end is tracked. There's numbers, statistics, data that shows everything. It'll show a year from now whether that was a good decision or not.
Thanks.
So I have 2, 1, 12:30. Larry?
Don't have an opinion on it. I'm sort of like what Norman said, I think we gotta listen to Ben. I've still got the same concern I said earlier. I just think we got business owners that depend on understanding all the alcohol ordinances, and I'm not sure we've given them an opportunity for input. That's my concern.
Chaz?
I don't really have an opinion, but I think we should play it by ear with the other business owners and see what they, what they would prefer.
Nathan?
Well, I tend to agree with Lee. We're talking about eating establishments, not general bars. If it were general bar.
We don't have bars in
That's right. So, yeah, I tend to agree with Lee.
So basically, it's going to be next month, kind of on the spot. We need to make a decision.
That would help.
Or if y'all could just email back and
Have an
forth.
ordinance before us.
Right.
And vote on it and change it. Can we?
Well, you'll have first reading, and first reading can come out in a form, and if you say, before second reading and adoption, we would like these changes, then you can certainly do that. You can hear from your constituents at next month at first reading, and you can make those changes and tweaks between first and second reading if you need to.
But if you make a change after the first reading, don't you have to have first reading again?
No, you do not.
At one point, that came up in the meeting.
So, y'all get with Logan, please, and we'll do the math and come up, it might be, 117 or something, but we'll try to make it work for everybody. Back to your districts. Lee Malcolm.
No, I don't have any.
Moshe's gone. Did Moshe get with you, Chris? Okay. Mr. Boyce.
Just an update on getting speed humps on Green Street.
Jeremiah, did you look at that? Okay.
There's already some speed bumps over there.
If you two get together and show them the numbers, okay? Mr. Bradley.
Not district, but just the general question, and maybe, I don't, Mr. Crawford's not here, maybe Lee might be able to help. Some people have approached me that at the farmer's market that said that there's a move underway or whatever to prohibit craft sales and just have agricultural products. You know? Okay.
No, that was a discussion point in the DDA meeting the other day about what is the composition of the current farmer's market? Is it becoming too heavily into the craft side? Or what can we do to encourage more producers? This year was a late crop in produce, so I think some of that's coming to fruition.
So there's nothing been said as far as limiting the other non-produce kind of stuff. Okay, that's apparently there's a big discussion.
It was a discussion point in the DDA meeting, but that's.
We asked the question, I think, when Andrea her name's Andrea, right?
No.
Audrey. When Audrey came, if there was a way to try to promote the sale of more fruits and vegetables and that sort of thing. And her explanation was valid. This year we've had late crops coming in, but yet we had enough vendors to obviously draw a number of people to the markets, and that we're in competition with larger markets, or these vendors could go to Dunwoody or, to whatever larger market is around, and their profits are greater, so of course they're gonna go there. So, and local, we're just losing growers every year from the local perspective. So.
That's good. I just, like they say, they approached me and I
Did
said,
I cover that, Leanne?
Mr. Garrett.
Not in my district, but my real concern was, why was the police department harassing them people on July 1st about parking in the grass? And I think R.V. can answer that.
I can. Well, when the event was coordinated, it was explained to my department through Chris Croy, Chris Bailey, that it was related to the coordinator, not to stake anything in the ground or to park on the grass. So my officers made it clear to the event coordinator. And Captain Davis is in here tonight. He actually had a conversation with that individual as well to please not park on the grass. I have since reviewed the video footage of that. Nothing was unprofessional, and individuals moved, and there was a place for them to park.
So was they out there yesterday? Because they had a ton of cars on the grass yesterday.
I'm not aware of anybody being parked on any grass yesterday. If you had called me or anybody called me, we would have enforced it yesterday.
So what made you enforce it on the 1st? Did somebody call you?
Yeah, we did receive a call. I spoke with Chris Bailey about it. And he explained to me that Chris Croy had contacted the event coordinator and explained to him just what I said. Over $700,000 has been spent to renovate that park. $700,000. It's clearly marked down there on 2 signs, no parking on the grass. If this council wants to let individuals park on the grass, then y'all can change it.
My concern is if you're going to implement it, worrying about it on the 1st, then you need to be worrying about it on the 16th.
If I'm made aware of any law being violated in the city, we'll enforce it.
Because clearly, what I saw, at least 15 cars rode by the whole time, back and forth. And I could be wrong, but I doubt it. It's almost like y'all don't want nobody black to do nothing in Monroe.
I don't know who you're referenced to when you say y'all, but I can tell you there's no discrimination in my organization.
So
there's no discrimination in my organization, Mr. Garrett. None. We enforce the law. That's it.
Because I had a lot of people that said something about this, and I'm thinking this is unreal. That you got 4 carloads of police out here. For what reason? Cause you said you got 2 cars on the grass?
And the interaction, if you want to look at the video footage of the officer's interaction with them.
I was there.
Yeah, well, it was professional. The only person that got irate about it was you. Everybody else was professional.
Yeah, because I'm the only one that really said what's on their mind. Did Kirkland not have this conversation with you?
I spoke with Kirkland. I've seen the video. Kirkland and Sam were fine.
What are you talking about?
I saw the video of the interaction. Kirkland said, "What do we need to do?" And Sam said, "Look, if you just get these off the grass, you won't see us anymore." The video was professional. Now,
I didn't say that we had no problem with the officers, because I'm almost like y'all saying something different than what I'm saying. I never said anything about the officers. I said, why do we have officers out there worrying about us on the grass when they clearly not worried about other people on the grass? That's my concern.
the concern from Kirkland was the number of officers. I had the opportunity to see a couple of officers come upon an event. I think it was either the day after the day before, where it was, I don't know, 4 or 5 people fighting, and we had, I think 3 of our officers were there, and Sam Harrison got jumped from behind that day. That's why there's a number, because the number that was originally put on the permit was 42 people, and 150 people showed up. So the numbers just kind of have to be based on the numbers of folks there.
He shouldn't have never filled out a permit, because it first come, first served. The other group didn't have a permit. And what y'all have told me, we don't have to fill out permit. So I'm understanding, how did he get a chance to fill out a permit when we clearly telling everybody you don't have to do nothing? First come, first served.
I thought we always had to have a permit.
We ain't have to have no permit. I mean, you might thought that, but that ain't so.
The applicant actually reached out to us as a courtesy permit to let public safety and parks know when he applied for it, because he applied for 42 people, 2 grills. And it was stated on the permit that that was the reason that he had reached out. So that's the problem we get into when we have events right now, because we don't have the staff to really run them, because we are a passive park system and it is first come, first serve. If they don't apply for a permit, then we don't necessarily know that they're out there unless somebody just goes by and sees it.
I just think it's kind of unusual that you gave him a permit, because when I asked about doing an event, the first thing you told me was you don't have to have a permit. It's first come, first served.
Well, nothing that we have currently says that you have to have a permit for
So
that,
why wouldn't
other
you
than.
tell him that then?
We didn't tell him that. He reached out to let us know.
But then you should have let him know first come, first served, because what
We
y'all
did.
didn't do, y'all didn't reserve a spot for him, period.
Right, because we're not renting any pavilions. It is first come, first served. But
So
he
what the purpose
communicated
of
to
the permit
us.
then?
He communicated to us out of courtesy.
I do understand that, and I think he did a good thing by trying to get it.
Mm-hmm.
The problem was, like I told him, the fact that you got the permit don't leave trouble coming in your way shortly. Because everything y'all have said went down to he got the permit when he shouldn't have never had a permit from the start. So everything y'all trying to justify is just nonsense that he got a permit that said y'all were gonna have 42 people. Who have a barbecue with everything free and only expect 42 people?
Well, we're just going off of what he gave us.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's what you using. What you basically trying to use is what he put on paper to justify what you shouldn't have been, what he shouldn't have had on paper anyway, because he shouldn't have never had a permit, to be honest. The other group didn't have a permit, and y'all have told me several times you don't have to have a permit to be out there. It's first come, first served.
Right.
So I find it strange that y'all gave him a permit from the start when he didn't need one.
Because he asked for one.
I asked for one, and you told me you didn't need one, so that don't mean nothing.
I don't remember you asking me. It goes through Danielle, that Public Works. At which point, like I say, if you know that there's a larger event, a larger crowd that's going to be there, that was why he stated that he let us know, just because.
You don't know what kind of crowd won't come out of there. I mean, who knows? That's just like saying how many people gonna be at a funeral.
But you got,
Well, I mean, we didn't know
It's
either.
all about safety.
apparently it was a great event.
It is about safety. The problem was you didn't have no safety issues.
Right.
The
But
police,
maybe it's because there was police presence. If I was doing a big group, I would welcome the police to be there.
you might would. And it's a reason you would welcome. And it's a reason we wouldn't welcome. So you definitely need to understand that part also.
Give them a chance, Norman. They were professional.
I never said they weren't professional.
That's what
Did
I'm
I say they?
saying.
No,
Give
you-
I
them a
never said
chance
they weren't
to Show
professional.
their presence,
What
to
I-
support the,
Lee, they ride by all day. What you mean showing their presence? Hell, that's all we see was their presence. They rode by every 5 seconds. What are you talking about?
So anyway, is there anything else?
No.
Thanks. Let's go to Tyler Gregory.
I was just gonna say, I think that the Parks campaign for online that Chris Booth's been doing has been doing great.
Really looks good.
People, and I appreciate, I saw y'all's article in the Walton Magazine where you're talking about parks. Really enjoyed that. Again, just while it's outdoor season, I'm liking all the improvements that we've done and all the stuff that's out there. So just thankful that we have that available.
Just wait, man. Got more coming. Nathan Little,
I don't have anything.
Mr. Dickinson.
Past my bedtime, Mr. Mayor.
All right, well, I have three things. Truck route that Norman and I were graduating high school when we started talking about it, started last Monday. So just talked to Scott Briscoe at ER Snell, just talked to him 4 hours ago.
did you ask him if we were gonna get to be part of the groundbreaking?
I don't want anything to do with that. I just wanted to get done. Plant Vogel, opening day appears to be on Saturday, so that's Vogel number 3. And then number 3, Georgia Local Government Personnel Association has awarded Les Russell with his Level 1 CHRM designation. Now, we know that that is government-related. Les has been doing this for 30 years, so he's already an expert, and we're lucky to have
He
him.
teaches the class on that, probably.
That being said, we do have executive session, so I need a motion to adjourn to executive session, please.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Malcolm, second by Mr. Garrett. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Meeting adjourned to executive session.